G'day, mate. 40 here. So it turns out that I was wrong about AI. Right? AI is going to be hugely more significant than I expected. And I've only started using it in the past month. And I'm recognizing now that it is going to come for millions of information processing jobs. And there's a provocative essay here in Aporia magazine. Yes, you are going to be replaced. And it gives example after example of how AI is simply outperforming people, right? Getting the job done, often more effectively and efficiently, at a much lower price than what people can do. So we have evidence that AI will diagnose medical patients far better than human doctors. And then if you've got a job essentially in information processing, right, AI is coming for your job, right? Wharton MBA students are asked to generate an idea for a new product or service appealing to college students that could be made available for $50 or less out of the 40 best ideas as judged by human beings not aware of the participation of AI. 35 of the best 40 ideas came from AI, right? The smartest people I know are using AI, right? About the smartest rabbi I know, Rabbi Shlomo Einhorn, right? He's now doing something with the AI, right? He's using AI for as a business consultant. Reviewing legal contracts, AI tends to do more accurate and excellent service than people, both in speed and in cost efficiency. Right, math problems. Right, AI was able to solve 25% of frontier math problems, which typically take human specialists days to solve. And then there's an article here in the Spectator. The person who edited this article will soon be redundant. So the author, Sean Thomas, has published several best-selling books. He asked Gemini, which is Google's version of AI, for feedback on his latest unpublished novel. And therefore, his novel was not in AI's training data. And he reports that AI, right, gave him a critique that was so good, it left him slack-jawed and dumbfounded. He says what made the critique so surprising, right, so striking, is its similarity to the critique my professional editor has already given me down to minor details. Where it differs, Gemini is better, sharper, and clearer, and my real human editor is brilliant, one of the best in the business. Veteran screenwriter Paul Schrader, known for the movies Taxi Driver, Raging Bull, First Reformed, posted on Facebook. I've come to realize that AI is smarter than I am. It has better ideas. It has more efficient ways to execute them. I sent ChatGPT a script I'd written some years ago, and I asked for improvements. In 5 seconds, it responded with notes as good as or better than I've ever received from a film executive. So you may be saying, well, apart from answering exam questions, apart from reviewing legal contracts, apart from solving math problems, apart from writing poetry, apart from responding with empathy and coming up with new ideas, and apart from diagnosing patients better than human doctors can, what has AI ever done better than humans? So ChatGPT was only released about 15 months ago, November of 2022. So we're only a few years into the new era of generative AI, right? And it seems right now that AI is at least as smart and at least as creative as the smartest and most creative people. And this is significant because AI is fast, it is cheap, it operates at lightning speed, it does not demand tens of thousands of dollars in compensation. Most intellectual tasks that are currently done by humans will be done more quickly and more cheaply by AI. So instead of hiring a lawyer, you will tell AI to review these documents and write up a contract. Instead of employing a financial analyst, you will instruct AI to analyze these data and offer recommendations. Instead of paying for streaming services, you will prompt AI to consult my favorite films and create a similar one. AI will cause the price of work that can happen in front of a computer to decrease much faster than the price of work that happens in the physical world. So millions of information processing jobs are no longer going to be necessary, right? We're talking about scores of lawyers, financial analysts, computer programmers, accountants, editors, graphic designers. AI researcher and super forecaster Peter Wilderford posted, I'm 50% sure we're all going to be unemployed due to technology within 10 years. Right, he was speaking loosely when he said all, but he says there will be massive labor market impacts. Many industry leaders are warning of job losses, including 70 to 80% of existing jobs.
That's the focus of tonight's angle.
Nobody's coming in, and nobody's coming now because they know they're not going to be able to come in. So we've really stopped something that was very, very serious. But we have to get the bad ones out. We have many murderers, many very bad people in our country that they've allowed because of a ridiculous, actually stupid, open border policy coming in.
956. That's the number of illegals, most with criminal records, who were deported by ICE just yesterday. In total, there have been 2,370 arrests of border crashers since January 23rd. That's about an average of 592 a day. These were child molesters, these were gangbangers, these were drug and human traffickers, and domestic abusers. Yeah, there were rapists, too. Meet Edgar de la Cruz Manzo, convicted child rapist and Mexican national, arrested by ICE in Seattle on Saturday. And there are just cold-blooded killers in the bunch, too, like Cesar Augusto Polanco, who hails from the Dominican Republic and was just picked up in Boston a few days ago. Now, seeing the deportation flights begin, the troops on the border, the no-nonsense Tom Homan doing what he does best, enforcing the law, protecting the homeland, this is all extremely positive. It has a phenomenal deterrent effect on anyone thinking of coming here at this point. Now, one would think that keeping vicious criminals off the streets would be uncontroversial. How's that controversial? But singer, actress, and skincare entrepreneur Selena Gomez, she's very upset.
Just wanted to say that I'm so sorry. All my people are getting attacked. The children. I don't understand. I'm so sorry. I wish I could do something, but I can't. I don't know what to do. I'll try everything, I promise.
Well, she's really crying there. Well, she tried until the fierce online backlash, and then Gomez deleted that insipid, weepy post. Notice she said, my people are getting attacked. What are my people? Is she an illegal alien committing crimes? That's not.
So apparently there's a whole genre of just weeping videos, right? Beware the weepy influencers. I think I need to start crying more to get higher ratings. Now, normally in real life, when someone cries, or when I cry, you cry, we all cry, all right, that just cuts away the BS and it gets right to the heart of the matter, what really matters to you. But people who are crying, who are influencers, who are trying to sell you stuff. Now, this thing that I do, the live streaming and the blogging, and I've been doing it since July 3rd, 1997, it's fun, but there is a sense that you're selling your soul. You mine your life for examples, you open up, you share about things that you're struggling with, you share very intimate details of your life. So unless you're willing to reveal your soul, sell your soul, then don't go online and become an influencer. But there are admirable ways that you can sell your soul. For example, if you talk honestly about things that you're struggling with that are then of use and help and provide connection and guidance to other people, that's a beautiful thing. But to be just weeping like this and just trying to commoditize your emotions this way is not a good thing.
Those aren't her people. Now, given that she's worth an estimated $1.3 billion, good for her, according to Bloomberg, I imagine Selena Gomez could establish homes for migrants in their home countries, where they're actually citizens. But no, she apparently thinks that working people should be punished by having these illegals flood their communities. And speaking of billionaires, and even worse than Gomez not caring about the safety of the American people, is a governor not caring about the safety of the American people. Enter shameless deceiver, Illinois' J.B. Pritzker.
They're going after people who are law-abiding, who are holding down jobs. Why are we going after them? These are not people who are causing problems in our country, and what we need is a path to citizenship for them. We also need to protect people, at least the residents of Illinois and all across the nation, who are just doing what we hope that immigrants will do.
Wait, did he say protect people? What a farce. Chicago is already reeling from gangbanger crime. They don't need any more problems. And raise your hand if you're tired of these rich politicians and CEOs and celebrities trotting out their immigration sob stories. I used to do this on my radio show years ago, complete with music. But every time enforcement is actually carried out or ramped up, it's always the valedictorian. It's always, it's the same thing. But first of all, if you're in the country illegally, and especially if you're a criminal, you are a deportable alien under U.S. law. And yes, the term alien is correct. Others here on phony claims of asylum, they are deportable as well. But just because wealthy Americans like cheap labor, that doesn't change what's true. Now, Trump won, and he said this tonight when he was in Florida giving that speech to the Republicans. He won in large part because of his pledge to deport millions of illegals. And I mean millions, not thousands, millions. The explosion of the illegal population coast to coast has had hideously destructive effects.
The key thing is you only have to deport one for another 100 to self-deport. So just deport a few thousand and hundreds of thousands will self-deport.
On local communities, on their schools, on their health care budgets. And of course, the crime, including against children, as we've seen with recent horrors in Boston, where local authorities had released this freak into the community. And there are tens of thousands of other violent illegal alien criminals still loose across America. And as far as the argument that garden variety illegal immigration is a victimless crime, you know what I say to that? Bull. Working families, first-time job seekers, as usual, they suffer the most. And also, kids in schools that are overloaded with ESL students. Budgets are crunched. Of course, wealthy Democrats, though, like JB, like Gavin Newsom, with their multiple homes and their private jets, they float above the misery they're willing to inflict on you. But they ought to be very careful here, because interfering with a federal law enforcement operation is a crime. Listen closely to his state AG, who parses his words very carefully.
I have no intent on interfering with legal immigration enforcement processes. The state of Illinois is that we have a trust act that says that local and state law enforcement resources cannot be used for such unless there's a federal criminal warrant. I'm going to stand by our Constitution. I'm going to stand by our state law.
What the open borders uniparty did to America.
So I'm always looking for an edge. I want to say something different. And so I just ignored the AI hype, right? Because I'm still not convinced that AI will consistently write better than a great writer, but there's increasing evidence that it can. And so many other people were talking about AI. I just ignored it, like global warming, right? A lot of very smart people talking about global warming, climate change. It's not something that I devote myself to, and I wasn't planning on putting much thought into AI. But today, with the news that China's come out with this cheap AI program, and it's taking tens of billions of dollars off the NASDAQ. And so if billions of dollars are being spent on AI programs, and it's increasingly dominating the news, and it's increasingly shaping life around me with people who work in information, it's just unavoidable that this is going to have a profound effect on our lives. And so I read this article in Aporia magazine and go, yeah, you talk to economic experts, will AI have a negative impact on the earning potential of a substantial number of highly skilled workers in advanced countries? And everyone says yes. Right? So there will be many unemployed lawyers, financial analysts, computer programmers, and they'll have to find something else to do. Will they consider working in a care home? Right, there are numerous occupations whose professional ranks have been decimated by technology. And just assuming that all unemployed workers will eventually return to gainful employment, right, that's not necessarily a good bet. Right, millions of people are going to face a painful transition period. And it's devastating if you're a high status person and you lose your status. It's devastating if you're a medium status person and you lose your status. Right, if you are used to living your life with an 8 out of 10 level of social status, and then because of AI, it drops to 2, right, that's going to be devastating. If you're used to living at a 3 out of 10 social status and you drop to 1, that's going to be devastating. Right, we're going to shatter all sorts of status hierarchies. Right, we're very likely to have perhaps social unrest, and yet conservatives do not seem bothered. You would think perhaps conservatives would be skeptical of radical change, and I consider myself right-wing, not necessarily conservative. So this is what Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, said. Conservatives are fools. They whine about the decay of traditional values, yet they enthusiastically support technological progress and economic growth. I enthusiastically support technological progress and economic growth. Apparently, it never occurs to them that you can't make rapid, drastic changes in the technology and the economy of a society without causing rapid changes in all other aspects of the society as well. Well, I live my life within Orthodox Judaism, and so if you are rooted to traditions and to a particular people, it simultaneously makes you more flexible with dealing with these kind of dramatic challenges and changes in the world outside. So part of us yearns for novelty, part of us yearns for safety and the familiar, and so we need to have some things in our lives that are safe and familiar and traditional. And if we have that kind of rock, if we have that kind of foundation, I think we will be better able to navigate changes such as AI. Now, I think a major reason that people on the right are not worried about AI is that almost everyone who's prominent for worrying about AI are on the left. Right? So it's disgruntled leftists who are railing against tech bros and data centers using too much electricity. And so just as if Christians are really into love, then Jews are going to be perhaps a little bit more reluctant to emote about love. Right? People want to distinguish themselves, and when your political enemies are all upset about AI, perhaps that's one reason why conservatives don't want to be associated with this kind of resentful, Luddite way of looking at the life. Also, complaining about AI is seen as low status, right? Because people who are associated with technological growth tend to be wealthy and successful, and holding opinions that get you labeled a Luddite is intensely unfashionable. Fourth, complaining about something whose continued development is all but guaranteed seems futile. So given the real potential benefits of AI, such as curing diseases, supercharging growth, unlocking the mysteries of the world around us, the possibility that there will be some problems seems quite remote, so what's the point of complaining? Now, usually lamenting the inevitable has been an integral part of the conservative tradition. Right? William F. Buckley talked about conservatives are those who stand athwart history yelling, "Stop." So this is Noah Smith, an editor at Aporia, says, watching conservatives cheerlead for AI because America is winning the global race, which may not even be true, can only be described as baffling. Well, I don't find it baffling, and I think he gave the reasons why. It's that the more social trust, social cohesion we have, right, the more coherent a country, the more high-functioning our country, the more we're connected to our family, to our friends, to our community, to concrete people, and to traditional ways of living, then ironically, the more flexible we'll be navigating these huge technological changes. So the chat says that AI has already taken over a bunch of YouTube channels. So I was wrong. AI appears to be incredibly more influential than I expected. But I've seriously, I've never thought about this topic. I've had a handful of conversations about it, but I haven't done any independent, hard thinking on this topic until today.
I'm sorry, it's treasonous. And until we remove all the threats to the homeland, we should have a pause on all immigration to the United States. We must get rid of this backlog. It is massive, in the tens of millions. And 1,000 a day is sadly, it's just a drop in the bucket. We need 10 times that number, which is possible if states and local officials actually cooperated. And you know what happens when America becomes, as Teddy Roosevelt warned all those years ago, a polyglot boarding house? Look at what went down in Dallas over the weekend.
The people united will never be defeated. The people united will never be defeated.
And we need not forget the NGOs and other groups that take in huge amounts of federal money to settle and help process illegal aliens, like the Catholic Charities.
I'm an attorney at Catholic Charities of the Archdiocese of Milwaukee in the Refugee and Immigration Services Program. This is a video about knowing your rights if Immigration and Customs Enforcement approaches you. If you are undocumented and immigration officers come to your workplace, be aware of the following. First, do not panic and do not run away. If you are questioned, you may tell them you want to remain silent. You can refuse to sign any or all paperwork until you've had the opportunity to speak to a lawyer.
All the money has to be cut off to these groups, all of it. This money should be spent on American homeless individuals, drug addicted, vets on the streets, the elderly living alone. All of this, it's got to stop. Now, naturally, CBS yesterday tried to pull the immigration sob story routine on Vice President J.D. Vance.
The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops this week condemned some of the executive orders signed by President Trump, specifically those allowing immigration and customs enforcement to enter churches and to enter schools. Do you personally support the idea of conducting a raid or enforcement action in a church service, at a school?
As a practicing Catholic, I was actually heartbroken by that statement. If they're worried about the humanitarian costs of immigration enforcement, let them talk about the children who have been sex trafficked because of the wide open border. If you had a violent murderer in a school, of course I want law enforcement to go and get that person out.
Of course.
So what's the point of the question?
Enough with the immigration sob stories.
So I'm not aware of synagogues that house illegal aliens. Right, so this seems to be mainly a Christian thing. So there's no notion, or very little notion in the Jewish tradition, that the synagogue is a holy place where if you're a murderer, if you're a rapist, you can just hide out there and be immune from the law. Right, that's not part of the traditional understanding of synagogue. It's a shame that so many Christians have allowed their religion to be taken over with that. All right, we've got here 69-year-old Raiders owner Mark Davis says his 26-year-old girlfriend didn't know he was a billionaire. She was just attracted to his smile. Yeah, that doesn't quite ring true for me. She was just attracted to his smile. Fox News is letting the excuses flow already. No, immigration isn't a state issue. This is a federal issue. If it fails within one day, like I know it will, then you blame the president. All right. Martin Guri. He's got an essay here on the Free Press. Is Donald Trump a dictator? Did the events of January 6, 2021 constitute an insurgency? Is Joe Biden sharp as a tack? Is the science of climate change settled? Are Javier Milei of Argentina, Marine Le Pen of France, and the Alternative for Deutschland party in Germany far right? Is the Wuhan lab leak hypothesis a conspiracy theory? Was the persistence of the coronavirus a pandemic of the unvaccinated? Does Anthony Fauci represent science? Well, when he made the pronouncements, Anthony Fauci probably spoke for the mainstream scientific opinion about 90% of the time. Does Elon Musk's social media platform X promote hatred? Do fact checkers check facts? Right. And he says these are silly questions. In an open society, perspectives on reality confront one another in forceful competition. Each may contain some particle of truth, release some useful information, and let the free market of ideas win out. Right? A vast diversity of perspectives should be promoted within an open society. It's the intellectual equivalent of hybrid vigor. If we all think alike, a single fatal error shared by all could destroy the world. Right? These precepts are not original. They've long been part of the American DNA. Americans used to be known until a large number of them started graduating from university. Americans used to be known for their plain speaking. Right? The default in American discourse has usually been wide open debate. But that started changing in the 1970s, and then it really became dramatic in the 2010s. Right? So the past 4 years, we've seen a sustained effort to overturn the principles of an open society. Right? The just departed administration, of which Joe Biden was just the decrepit figurehead, tried to impose, by threat or mandate, a version of reality that brooked no discussion. I remember just how disheartened I would get in 2018, right? The last half of 2018, 2019, 2020, when it just seemed that the avenues for free and open discussion for live streams certainly were closing in, and even the repercussions for blogging were becoming increasingly intense. And I just despaired about open discussion. It was like the school moms and the HR departments that were coming for the internet. And thank God people on the right developed alternative platforms on which I'm streaming right now, such as X and Odyssey and Rumble. And I haven't used Truth Social, but I'm glad it's there. I'm glad there's BitChute. And in reaction to the wide open speech that probably Elon Musk has done more than anyone to give us, and the success of a platform like Rumble, all right, and the success of a platform like Kick, right? There's wide open speech on Kick. It's started by Australians. So in response to that, now YouTube and Facebook, right, dialing way back on their censorship efforts. But it used to be mainstream conservative opinions, such as the traditional response to the transgender mania was that people had mental health problems, right? That was considered hate speech, right? 1/2 of the American political spectrum was consistently bumping up for the most middle-of-the-road expressions of the conservative point of view, were just bumping up against hate speech terms of service on major social media platforms. Americans were plain speaking. I thought we invented weasel words. Americans used to have a reputation for plain speaking as opposed to more elaborate speech used by Europeans. Now, has every American always been plain speaking? And we certainly don't have the same plain speaking reputation today that we did in the 1950s. So the Joe Biden administration, with its censorship regime, right, had considerable support in the news media, the academy, in government bureaucracy, in big business, right? It was thought appropriate that government should be the guardian of truth. And yet, on almost every important question that confronted the country during the Biden administration was almost invariably wrong. From the COVID pandemic to the economy, from energy to war and peace, right? The faceless clique that ran the government on Joe Biden's behalf made a mess of things. Now, normally when you fail, you try something different, right? It's called trial and error. It's called the scientific method. But the Biden people, being consistently wrong about almost everything, decided to sanctify their mistakes. They decided that they would be the keepers of reality, that they owned the truth, and they told us over and over again, error is truth, and they insisted we repeat it. Right? We had a ruling class, our elite, strongly believe in censorship on social media. Ordinary people do not believe in censorship on social media. But this is perhaps the most dramatic difference between elite opinion and regular American opinion. Elite opinion says that we should massively regulate and change the American way of life to reduce the threat of climate change. Regular Americans aren't on board with that. And perhaps the best articulation of the Biden administration point of view on these questions came from the then Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern, during the COVID pandemic. She said, "We will continue to be your single source of truth. Unless you hear it from us, it is not the truth." And the Biden administration ascribed to itself this same kind of divine attribute, that it was the single source of truth and light, and the many errors out there, they were disinformation and misinformation, including that Joe Biden was descending into senility. And most in the news media went along. Right? They defended and parroted the Biden administration, just like a person of faith might defend and quote sacred scripture. Academia went along, corporations went along, the mainstream churches and synagogues went along. Right? They placed the secular word of a doddering, senile president above their own life experience. Right? Our open society was closed for repairs until last week. So the greatest danger in this kind of closed system is not the error, it's the impossibility of correcting the error. Right? In the Joe Biden's farewell address, he railed against misinformation and disinformation enabling the abuse of power. In his farewell address, he complained about Facebook's dismissal of fact-checkers. He said the truth is smothered by lies, and you'd think he'd know about that. And their justification for destroying our open society was that ordinary people cannot handle the truth. So, thank God, things have changed now under this new president.
There are just as many American difficulties out there because of the illegal immigrant crush. JD killed it in that interview. And don't you love how Democrats and their pals in the regime media have suddenly become fiscal hawks when it comes to the cost of deporting all the illegals that their policies allowed in?
They want to invest billions of dollars in the mass deportation, which, by the way, will also drive up costs when we lose hardworking immigrants that have been here for decades, expect prices to go through the roof.
His plans to deport undocumented migrant workers and put tariffs on imports would likely drive up the cost to build more homes.
These sorts of things are going to cost a lot of money. You're going to need a lot of money to fund what he wants to do at the border, how he wants to deport millions of undocumented immigrants.
Do people ever like this ever tire of being in this perpetual state of hysteria? Right, after you've been consistently wrong. All right, they said that the same sort of things about the first Trump administration.
Oh, yeah, now they want to cut costs. Where were they 4 years ago? Now, Tom Homan has the best response to all of this.
There's consequences of entering a country illegally. If we don't show there's consequences, you're never going to fix the border problem. Congress has a mandate to give us money we need. What price you put on national security? What price you put on all these young ladies that have been raped and murdered and burned alive? What price you put on that? What price you put on Lincoln Riley's life? What price you put on national security?
America needs to be America again. Immigration, the right kind, once we get our house in order, it's beautiful. People who love our country, our culture, our language, our flag, it's a beautiful thing. But divided loyalties are poisonous to our national purpose. But the left, they want us at each other's throats. They love it. They love scenes like that in Dallas. Constant strife. They depend on it. Remember Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals? It's all in there. Pick the target, freeze it, personalize it, and polarize it. Look, we're only a week in, and so far, so good. But with approximately 15 million illegals here, probably more, Tom Homan and the DHS will need to move with deliberate speed. They'll need to get creative. Everyone here illegally needs to return home so we can have peace in our home. And that's the angle. Joining us now is Vashon Tunsil, Chicago resident and activist, and Joe Borelli, minority leader of the New York City Council. Vashon, Tom Homan's deportations in Chicago, you heard your governor and you've heard your mayor. They're really upset by this. They say, oh, we're not going to interfere, but.
But, okay, I just want to say this. First thing I want to say is
Okay, so you'll be shocked to learn the mayor of Los Angeles, Karen Bass, she's 71 years of age. She's never really held a major executive position, longtime congresswoman, but being a mayor or a governor or a president, very different from being one of 435 members of Congress. And a lot of people simply do not believe she's up to the job.
Karen Bass, the mayor of Los Angeles, who sat a seat away from Donald Trump at a kind of a roundtable event on Friday and took a fair amount of heat, is taking a fair amount of heat from people who are her constituents, as well as some people within the Los Angeles government and Sacramento. Hearing from quite a few sources that they believe that her political future is cloudy at best, and are concerned that she's not moving fast enough. And that was a big theme of the event on Friday, in which both Donald Trump and some of the attendees urged her to get moving faster. And she was saying proudly that some things would take only a week. And Donald Trump and some of the people in attendance said, no, a week's too long. Like, these things need to happen now. So I don't have anything to tell you beyond there's growing concern about her capacity to do the job to which she was elected. And
doesn't this sound like Joe Biden, right? She's just doesn't appear up to
growing
it.
Concern about how she's dealing with the pressure and tensions and demands of addressing the fires and the fire aftermath.
Something that has changed and Trump is taking advantage of, he is trying to make sure everyone understands this is a team sport now. And you're either wearing the Trump jersey or you're wearing
the Colombian jersey.
Yes. and so you can't decide to wear the jersey and then, well, I'm going to sit out this particular play, or I'm going to play for the other team on this particular play. So I think he's doing a lot of things now, including these.
So I tend to be individualist. I tend to put a lot of importance on my own free expression. I don't like to think of myself as sheep, just following in line with everyone else. I think, oh, I've got some interesting perspectives on this or that. So purely on the merits, I would disagree probably with 10% of the things that Donald Trump's doing. I don't like the January 6th pardons, for example. I think Pete Hegseth and all of Trump's health appointees are terrible appointees. But if I were in the U.S. Senate, right, I would vote to confirm them because I want Donald Trump to have that aura of strength and cohesion and unity. So to have the most intense in-group experience, you have to be willing to give up an awful lot of individual freedom. And if you haven't lived your life with intense in-group identity and cohesion with your group, it is absolutely electrifying. It is intense. It is dramatic. It should be experienced. Right, and then you could decide, I want it dialed down. I'm willing to give up some in-group cohesion and identity for more freedom, which is what I have done. Right, I have, when I got into Orthodox Judaism, there were weeks and months where my Orthodox Jewish identity was just number one, just outweighed every other consideration, because I just felt so fed, so fulfilled. I felt like aligned with God. I felt aligned with my rabbi. I felt aligned with my community. I would go to synagogue in the morning to study Talmud and to pray, and we would eat in kosher restaurants, and there was a sense that we're all in it together, and it was absolutely intoxicating for me, who too much of my life I felt lonely and isolated and lacking in energy, and there was just a strength, a power, an energy, an enthusiasm, a drama in the best sense. There was a thrill. There was a sense that my choices mattered, that my life mattered, that I mattered, that I was a contributing member of my community. And so I was living my life at like a 10 out of 10 level of Orthodox Judaism, in-group identity, just in love with my community, following my rabbi. But then the cost of my personal freedom of expression became too much, and there had to be some Orthodox communities that I was not a good fit in. Right? You can't really defy your rabbi in many Orthodox Jewish communities. You're then not going to be a good fit for that community. So I had to try out a less intense form of Orthodox Judaism so that I could retain my freedom of speech. But it's not like freedom of expression, freedom is better than connection and purpose and in-group identity, right? There is a power and an energy and an enthusiasm and a sense of connection and a calming down to my central nervous system from every morning, like crack of dawn, getting up at 5:30, going off to synagogue with the same people 7 days a week. You see them in the morning, and you study a page of Talmud, and you pray together, and you eat together, and you drink together. And then often you come back in the evening for evening prayers, and you help each other out. You're willing to sacrifice for each other. You wouldn't even think about going to extend yourself to aid somebody else, whether they need a ride or whatever they need. You just have that sense that you're all in it together. And if you haven't experienced that, it's absolutely intoxicating. I remember when I was in Israel in July and August of year 2000, it just seems like everything was more weighty, more important, more dramatic, more exciting. There wasn't the ennui. There wasn't a kind of a blasé attitude towards life. Life was just incredibly intense. Jewish life is intense, and Israel as the Jewish state is particularly intense. And if you, like me, have suffered from nihilism at times, feeling like nothing matters, nothing I do matters, I don't matter, then getting caught up in a communal experience in Israel was just life-changing. I was like, oh man, I got to change my life right here, right now. When I came back, I started returning to shul every morning, returning to Talmud study every morning, going to shul often in the evenings. I had to get closer. I stopped going to non-Orthodox synagogues because I had such an intense experience of life in Israel. I felt like everything I said, everything I did mattered. One way that this can become deranged is Jerusalem syndrome, where people feel like that they've become the Messiah or that we're living in the end times. But it's a sense that your life matters, and you're walking the same paths that people in the Bible were walking. There are places there that you've read about in the Bible your entire life, and that you're a part of a Jewish state, filled with Jews, dominated by Jews, run by Jews, where it's really easy to be Jewish, and the non-Jewish ways of doing things and looking at things, that's what's in the minority. So I grew up with intense in-group Seventh-day Adventist identity, and I went out into the secular world as I moved through my teens into my early 20s, but there was something in me that yearned to get back to that place of having a community, right? Being strongly, tightly connected to other people, having a purpose and a meaning above and beyond yourself in the community, and developing bonds with people that develop over years and decades, right? So I will go to synagogue, and there will be sometimes 3-4 generations of a family praying there in the synagogue, eating there in the synagogue, drinking there in the synagogue, dancing there in the synagogue, right? The great-grandparent, grandparent, parent, child, all right, they're all there together, and they've all been in the community, right, their entire lives. Now, for some people, that's not going to be a good fit, right? Not everybody's cut out for tight in-group identity, right? For some people, that would feel absolutely stultifying. They'd feel smothered. But for other people, particularly if you haven't tried it, right, intense in-group identity, as long as it's not a destructive in-group identity, is worth giving a shot.
Retreats as Coach Trump to build team spirit here. And it's smart stuff.
Yeah. Dan, is there anything Democrats can do to drive a wedge between Donald Trump and these followers in the Congress?
No, and in fact, right now, the opposite is true on the Democratic side. Both Jeffries and Schumer told members they could vote their conscience on the Lake and Riley Act. They are also being told on this censure of the ICC that Senate Democrats don't have agreement on it. And so I think the party is still scrambling to try to get its footing, to figure out where to try to draw a line and ask everybody to hold hands in lock in opposition.
By the way, if you want to have a good laugh, just think about the idea that you are allowed to vote your conscience on this one.
Yeah. Yes, that's a good point. Alex, the first week has been quite something.
Yeah, that's a good point if you have an individualist perspective. But to get anything done, you have to organize. Why is there organized religion? because to get something done, to create a particular type of community, one that is best suited for what your religion stands for, right? You need to organize, right? Just you, the individual on your own, who stands apart from organization, you're never going to get anything done. Look, do you think the left is finished and will have to rediscover itself? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So what will the new facade of the left going to wear? Okay, let me get into that. Give me a minute here.
It's certainly been high velocity. Again, just as we never saw a transition like this, we've never seen the first week like this, again, in our lifetime. And Donald Trump's approval rating now is higher than it was in his entire first term. So we talk about political capital. Dan talks about it quite a bit. How does public opinion matter, if at all, in the Trump executing his agenda now?
You know, the old theory is you build political capital, you get elected with it, and then you spend it to govern, which is true unless you're actually going to do some of the things you said you were going to do that helped you build the political capital. And that's a shocker, apparently, in Washington. Gee, you mean, wait a minute, we can create a factory that will sell products people will like? And
so there's an important book, get the second edition. It came out last year. It's called Predisposed, Liberals, Conservatives, and the Biology of Political Differences. So a large part of the reason why other people see things differently from you is that they experience things differently from you. It's not just that people have different political ideologies in their head. People have different predispositions that are in large part genetic, and they experience life differently. So think about differences between the left and the right, Democrats and Republicans, right? People on the left are way more open to new ways of doing things, particularly in organizing families and organizing a sex life, right? They're much more innovative. So Republicans tend to be much more conscientious than people on the left. So Republicans tend to be respectable, to be sober, to be purposeful, to be self-righteous, to be cut and dried, to be boring. And people on the left, they're much more likely to do drugs and to go to orgies, to be sweaty, to be disordered, to be offhand, to be imaginative, to be open to new experiences, new substances, to be more tolerant, right? So both sides of the political spectrum come with particular gifts, and depending on the circumstance, one approach to life will work better than the other. So if you're going to devote yourself to the arts, it would seem to be indispensable to be high in openness, right? If you're going to be an accountant or a great attorney, you better be high in conscientiousness. So people on the left and people on the right don't just have different tastes in politics, they also have different tastes in art. So people on the right like stories that have a conclusion, that are not left open-ended. People on the right, people who are conservative, prefer art that is realistic, right? People on the left, they receive more pleasure from abstract art, different types of humor, different types of food, all right? People on the left much more likely to experience with food. They organize their rooms differently. You can look at how someone organizes their room and have a realistic sense of where they stand politically, right? We have different neural architecture. We have distinct brain waves that display differently in different circumstances. We have different personalities, right? People on the left tend to be higher in openness. People on the right tend to be higher in conscientiousness, right? We have different psychological and physiological tendencies. We pay attention to different stimuli, right? We probably have some genetic differences, right? We are emotionally, preferentially, psychologically, and biologically distinct. So the left has traditionally been the party of change, and the right has traditionally been the party of order and stability, right? And these differences come from our basic genetic makeup, and they go back thousands of years. Right, so the left is obsessed with equality and new ways of doing things and staying open to new ways of doing things. On the right, you will find support for hierarchy, for authority, for law and order, and the traditional ways of doing things. So there are going to be some situations that are better suited to a strict hierarchical decision-making. So I'm thinking about the 1973 Yom Kippur War. Syria was advancing with its tanks on the first night of the war, and it had nothing but open road in front of it. It could just pour into Israel, but the Syrian military had a strict hierarchical decision-making, and so when the leader said stop, you had no options. And so Syria stopped at about 9 p.m. on the opening night of the war, and they did not resume fighting until about 9 a.m. the next day. Right? If they had given their commanders more room, right, then Israel could have just poured into Israel, and Syria could have poured into Israel and very well won the Yom Kippur War. Now, Germany, by contrast, has traditionally empowered its officers to have a huge amount of autonomy. And in the United States Armed Forces, right, its officers have considerably more autonomy than, say, Syria or other strictly hierarchical situations. So there are advantages to hierarchical decision-making, and there are sometimes advantages to egalitarian arrangements where you empower people to make their own decisions. So there are advantages to seeing outgroups as threats, and there are advantages to seeing outgroups as potential sources of friendship and trade and new knowledge. And depending on the situation, the right-wing approach will be more adaptive, or the left-wing approach will be more adaptive. Right? The right-wing approach is to have more concern and fear and anxiety about outgroups. And the left-wing approach is to see outgroups as potential sources of friendship and knowledge and trade. Right? You will usually do better in life if you follow traditional practices, which is a right-wing direction. But there will be times when you will be better off innovating. And there will be new fads and new fashions and new lifestyles that may suit you better than the traditional. So the left-right distinction boils down to attitudes towards outgroups. So people on the right have more suspicion of outgroups. And then how much do you punish people who violate norms, violate morality, violate the law within your group? So on the right, it means that you're much more in favor of punishment, and you're much more at ease with the element of vengeance in all punishment. While on the left, they are much more in favor of education and trying to enlighten people, and they think that punishment and vengeance are primitive. So the right, distinguished by aversion to outgroups, strict punishment for people who violate laws and norms. People on the right tend to embrace traditional ways of living. They desire strong leaders, and they don't like redistributing resources on an egalitarian basis, particularly if those resources benefit outgroups. And the left is distinguished by openness to outgroups, by lenient punishment of norm violators, by an eagerness to embrace new lifestyles, by suspicion of strong leaders, and by a desire for egalitarian distribution of money and resources. So in some situations, with some people, right-wing solutions will work out better, but in other situations, left-wing solutions will work out better. Now, I was just reading an essay about how conservatism doesn't have an ideology anymore, and it's just following Donald Trump. But ideology is just the high IQ person's play that he wants to develop on his basic instincts and see the philosophical and political implications. And so if you're inclined in a philosophical abstract direction, you'll develop ideology. But the right-wing approach is to be concerned about outgroups. Now, this right-wing approach might mean we invade Afghanistan in 2001 or Iraq in 2003. That was an approach that comes out of the political right. Or it means we wall ourselves off and we become isolationist so that we can keep others out. So one way to deal with outgroups is to intervene and invade them and beat them down. Another way to deal with dangerous outgroups is to wall yourself off. Right? Two different right-wing strategies for achieving the same goal. So people on the right differ over which strategy is most likely to succeed, but they share an agreement that the underlying goal, security from outsiders, is of prime importance. Now, people on the left are much less likely to see the world in terms of group differences, of in-groups and out-groups, right? They are less likely to lose sleep over the threats posed by Guatemalan immigrants, right? Conservatives support nation building, right? Nationalism, when it will stabilize the people and help them to prepare for a dangerous foreign enemy. People on the left find nation building appealing when it's framed as enhancing self-determination and the welfare of everybody and integration with the international community. So integration with the international community, the globalist perspective, is much more dominant on the left. So whether you're on the left or the right, you'll often advocate different political strategies and platforms and programs, but those basic differences of fear and concern about outgroups versus openness to outgroups will still underlie the different political strategies, right? So the wariness of outgroups and concern about being pushed around by outgroups, right, that's going to dominate people on the right, right? Conservative supporters of Brexit in the United Kingdom, right, they were repulsed by the idea of outsiders, such as decision makers in the European Union, telling them what to do.
And this will actually help us.
So yes, the left will come back, and there will be situations where left-wing policies and left-wing attitudes and left-wing approaches will be more useful in life. It is not marked out by the will of heaven that the right is always right. It's not marked out by the will of heaven that the left is always wrong. I am biased towards the right, I would believe, because of genetic predispositions. Most people in my ancestry and extended family tend to be right-wing. So I have a right-wing political bias, but I recognize that sometimes big government being open to outsiders, dialing back the punishments, and right, in some situations, those will be more adaptive policies.
Politically, if we govern well, yeah, I think that's what we're seeing. And Trump's going to get a pretty good ride here. I know we're looking at, okay, he's going to have trouble internally with the House Republicans and the Freedom Caucus. And yes, there are going to be a ton of fights. But big picture wise, this guy's already made the economy work once by undoing what the previous administration had done. We've got a retreat from globalization where capital is scared, not going to stay in China and wants to come home. We've got a business-friendly administration. In a few months, if this thing starts to tick and move forward, maybe his numbers now are low.
Yeah. You know, I'm always on guard, as I know you two are, for assuming that real people are paying attention to something that political people are paying attention to. I truly wish I were cloned, and I would send my clone to Milwaukee or Green Bay, probably, and have him go to a diner every morning and say, y'all talking about the J6 pardons. I really think that a lot of this stuff directionally is... Scott Besant confirmed. Will we
yes.
That count?
Yeah.
I think directionally people are seeing, we've talked about this before with Steve Elmendorf, people are seeing action, and I think they are seeing sort of some things they like, kind of, again, directionally, they're seeing action on fulfilling promises. But so many of these things, I just can't imagine my friends in the Green Bay Diner are talking about. For instance, the firing of the Jack Smith prosecutors. Exactly. It will be MSNBC will have to add 3 hours of prime time to talk about that, and the Washington Post will have it at the top of the homepage for the foreseeable future. But Dan, do you think they're talking about that in the Green Bay Diner?
Yes and no. I mean, I think to go back to what Alex said, the thing that got Trump elected, that he ran on, was fixing the economy. Right? If the economy were booming and inflation hadn't happened, this would have been a different game. But how many people in the fall said, my economic situation...
So read smart people on the left. Right? They often have thoughtful critiques that you might not have thought of, I haven't thought of. And Stephen Walt is a smart person on the left. He's a professor of political science at Harvard University. He co-wrote a book on the Israel lobby with John Mearsheimer. Most political realists, right, people who belong to the realist school of international relations, who believe that power runs the world, not liberal ideology, they tend to be on the left. So Stephen Walt writes a weekly column for Foreign Policy, and he's got a good left-wing challenge here. This could be peak Trump, right? His return to power has been impressive, but the hard work is about to begin. Trump is really good at creating impressive TV events, right? He's a great performer. He's not a great administrator, right? So if you just listen to Fox News and the pronunciations of the Trump administration, you might think that all resistance is futile, right? But we should not mistake Trump's bombastic return and far-reaching early initiatives for unstoppable momentum, right? We are all vulnerable to the laws of gravity, both literal laws of gravity and metaphorical laws of gravity that operate in human affairs, right? Making lavish promises, as Donald Trump does, is easy. Delivering impressive results is hard. Donald Trump has never demonstrated that he's particularly good at running anything. Now, Donald Trump is great at getting banks to lend him money for dubious business ventures. He's great at cooking up schemes such as his meme coin. All right, he is adept at persuading voters that the United States was in terrible shape and that he alone could fix it. Right, he has spent his entire life just staying a step ahead of the sheriff. Right, he's pretty good at extracting benefits for himself and his family and his friends. And he is incredibly entertaining. He is fun to be around. People get energized and excited and really enjoy hanging out with Donald Trump. What Donald Trump is not much good at is running things. Right? He's not much good at running organizations, let alone the U.S. government. He's not much good at designing coherent policies and delivering broad benefits to ordinary Americans. So might he do better this time around? Yeah, I believe he will. But he faces some pretty big obstacles, right? Donald Trump wants to go down in history as a great peacemaker. At the same time, his way of getting there is through bullying and threatening to use force, right? He wants to shake a big stick in all directions, and that's not going to always work. People will call Trump's bluff, and he will at times have to back down. His economic policies, right, have a lot of contradictions in them. There are big contradictions between Trump's threat to punish other countries, most notably Mexico, and his anti-immigration agenda. Gutting government institutions, imposing litmus tests on the civil service, putting unqualified and troubled individuals in charge of key government organizations. So I don't like any of the Trump health cabinet appointees, and I don't believe that Pete Hegseth is qualified to run the Pentagon. So my two biggest concerns about this Trump administration are, one, corruption, and two, incompetence delivering lower quality government services. I am down with challenging the left-wing stranglehold on American universities, but America's universities are the world's best universities. And there is a level of harassment of our universities that will make the U.S. dumber, that will reduce our human capital, and will enable other countries to catch up. Right? We need the smartest, most effective scientists, engineers, doctors, artists, social scientists, lawyers, and other experts. Right? We do need expertise. So trying to impose a MAGA agenda at a certain point will probably be beneficial. It will clear out the dead wood that is down with diversity, equity, inclusion, and affirmative action. But at a certain level of intervention, we will start stifling innovation. There's every reason to believe that Donald Trump will take government corruption to a whole new level. Right? He is terrific at extorting money and concessions from the tech billionaires who are eager to kiss the ring. And Trump is the culmination of the long Republican quest for a unified executive, right? For a mammoth concentration of executive power. But there are downsides to that. Right? People are fallible, and sometimes too much power, and you don't get the correction that would come with having to fight things out. So Trump says he's going to lead America into a golden age. All right. There are some good critiques from the left of the Trump presidency. Right? You can listen to the left at times and go, oh, there's a good point there. Here's a good point here.
Was worse. And so I'm going with this guy. I'm giving him a chance. A lot of the stuff he's done, some of it, immigration, he's beginning to move. It's small potatoes a little bit right now, right? It's 80 people, not 8,000, but okay, it's action. But on a lot of this stuff, it's helping Trump, but I don't know if it's helping people. And I think they like the action. It's a good start, but he has not put points on the board to help real people yet, in my opinion. Now, it's only been a week. You could argue that either way.
Well, restricting illegal immigration and doing away with diversity, equity, inclusion, and the destructiveness to both excellence and to social trust and social cohesion, to me, those help real people. But I got to admit, there are people out there who are afraid, right? There are people who are gay and queer, and they're having orgies right now, and they're afraid that Donald Trump is going to deport them.
People
and
who are noticing this and saying it. That
maybe we need to be more inclusive.
Let me make one final plea, Mr. President. Millions have put their trust in you. And as you told the nation yesterday, you have felt the providential hand of a loving God. In the name of our God, I ask you to have mercy upon the people in our country who are scared now. There are gay, lesbian, and transgender children in Democratic, Republican, and independent families. Some who fear for their lives. And the people.
And let's bring one of them up right now. And they just bring one of them up. That would be great. And they go, and now we're going to, and one of them is here with us tonight. There are gay, lesbian, and transgender children in Democratic and Republican. And one of them is here with us right now. And then you just see like a child drag queen come up, and she's like, "Fuck you, bitch." She's like, "And thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for that. That is Desmond. Thank you, Desi." Many of the people now, Trump. May I?
Wait, I'm feeling unsafe right now. Desmond's my father's name, and when my father died, I primarily felt relief because I had some fear of Desmond, right? He intimidated me. He saw me more clearly than I saw myself, right? I couldn't fool Desmond. And sometimes when I'd hear a creak in the boards of the floor, right, through my adult life, I was like, oh no, that's Desmond. He's coming to spank me.
Let me make one final plea with you and your fascist pig family. You said the other day that you feel that you're being guided by the loving hand of the provincial hand of a loving God. I'd ask you to have mercy right now on the people in this country that are scared. The demisexuals, the sapiosexuals, the people that are into bondage, the people that are into blood play, the people that are into S&M, the people who go into an orgy without a safe word. I want you to take mercy on these people. I want you to take mercy on the immigrants who pick the strawberries that I put in my ass. Every now and then I will put strawberries in my ass. I come anally. I'm the minister. Many of you in this church are sitting here in this service, and you're thinking about the people in this country right now who might be scared. People who are transgender, people who are non-binary, people who go by the Z-zer pronoun, people who are gender fluid. Do you understand that? There are people right now in orgies that are illegal. They may not have the documents. They may not have the documentation, but they're in an orgy right now, and they're about to come, and they're scared. They're scared for what happens when you take office. Can you speak to those people? Can you speak to illegal immigrant transgender people in an orgy right now at my house while I'm here? Because there are 5 illegal immigrant transgender Guatemalans in my house having sex right now, and I'm watching them on my phone, and they're very scared. They're very scared of what's about to happen. Is there any way?
People who pick our crops and clean our office buildings, who labor in poultry farms and meatpacking plants, who wash the dishes after we eat in restaurants, and
This guy's hilarious. All right, essay in The Atlantic. Trump can't escape the laws of political gravity, and I believe he's right, right? Politicians who overinterpret narrow wins in a divided country get pulled back to earth. Joe Biden overinterpreted his narrow win in 2020. The whole federal system of government gives a lot of power to the states. So it's going to be hard for Donald Trump to bully, right, every governor, every mayor, right? Power is so widely distributed in the United States. We've got lawyers who create their own gravitational field who are going to get in the way. All right, so for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Right, if you blow up the national debt to cut taxes, then that'll have an effect sooner or later on the financial markets, give way to vaccine skepticism, epidemics will break out, turn the intelligence community and military upside down, and you will produce not only big, embarrassing, consequential failures, but also pushback from large populations. And there is always retribution, right? Political physics runs along the line of the lyrics composed by Johnny Cash. That old wheel is going to roll round once more. When it does, it will even up the score. So life can just change like that. Dennis Prager on top of the world, had Prager University, a nationally syndicated radio show at age 79. He'd never been more powerful, more influential, slips on the floor. He's now paraplegic, can't even speak.
Work the night shifts in hospitals. They may not be citizens or have the proper documentation.
They are gay. They may not be citizens, but they're all in an orgy right now in my house. They're at an orgy in the basement of my house, and they may not be citizens, and they may not pay taxes, but they're going hard, and they've been going hard for hours. They're on raw Molly, Mr. President, and they're scared. They're scared of what's about to happen to them. Is there going to be a raid? Are they going to be sweatily dragged out of my house? Their sweaty, shivering bodies coming down from Molly, covered in each other's fluids. They may not have the papers. They may not have the papers, but they're fucking Mr. President. And I want you. Tiffany Trump in the back she just looks high. Let's finish this. This is very interesting.
But the vast majority of immigrants are not criminals. They pay taxes and are good neighbors.
Okay, I think he was pretty good there.
Alex, just speak for real people. What's the best thing and worst thing Trump's done for real people? Not for their lives, but for their perceptions of how he's doing.
You're absolutely. But to your point about Jack Smith and all of that, democracy already reached its end when he got reelected. So more stories about the end of democracy, I'm not sure are going to have a lot of traction. Yeah. I think you're dead right about that. But your question was?
Name something he's done that you think if you walked into a Green Bay diner and said, folks, what's Trump done that you liked? What would be number one on their list? Number one would be he has demonstrated strength and pulled the world together. Okay. And number two, you said to him, you govern in metaphor, right? When you don't have to lock up 5,000 people a day. If the way Mexican drug gangs used to work is they'd go into a country club in Mexico City and say, give me all your watches and your purses. And then somebody would say no, and then they'd shoot him in the knee. And everyone became much more cooperative. All you need is an example. And other countries begin to react. For example, today with Colombia and the Colombian president, do you think other countries got the message? They did. So I bet a bunch of senators got the message too. There was a spot that closed the Trump campaign, which went, 4 years ago, we lost our way. 4 years ago, we took a wrong turn and America lost its purpose. We lost the strength that makes Americans who we are. That strength, I think, is back. Now, I do think, and I'll say it again, I think he is going to benefit from 4 great years of economic growth. One is government is going to be business friendly. That makes a difference in attitude. 2, the rest of if we retreat from the world and the rest of the world is on its own, as Trump is wont to do, that means capital comes back home. We're going to be flooded with money here and investment. And then on top of that, you've got an AI boom. Tech, we're inventing television and radio and the printing press again. Buy some futures, folks, because Trump is not only a talented guy, but he is also a fortunate individual. This is not a bad time for this country, and he may be hitting the sweet spot here just right. Scott Bessent confirmed 68.
So all sorts of people are crying their eyes out over Donald Trump and over other things. Lucky us, all right? We get to live in the age of the Weepy Influencer, oh man. So in psychology, right, in my psychology practice as the author, when tears enter the room, they have a way of cutting through the noise or the defenses or the pretenses, right? One's carefully constructed walls fall away when you start crying, right, often allowing something deep and true and important to emerge, right? This happens time and time again for people. Crying is one of the purest forms of vulnerability, but crying TikTok, people posting videos of themselves crying or trying not to cry, right? This is the selling of the promise of real emotional connection, and it's a way to get their hooks into you, right? These are gestures towards intimacy. They're meant to inspire empathy, right? But it's a synthetic version of vulnerability. Beware the weepy influencer.
To 29, so more than a dozen Democratic votes. Alex, if you walked into the diner and said, what's the thing Trump's done you like the least, what would they say?
I think it's probably some of the usual Trump excesses, the hyperbolic statements, the things like he did today, you know, running for his 4th, 5th, 6th term. That's probably makes up some people a little queasy.
Yeah.
Well, Megyn Kelly and Steve Bannon had some interesting thoughts.
At a Chicago school after Trump took office. It makes me so sad, said Eva Chavez, a 37-year-old who lives in the neighborhood and came out after she heard about it. Immigration groups arrived. Parents panicked. Some took their kids out of the school. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker spread the lie on X, saying the first reports of raids in Chicago are at an elementary school targeting children, separating families. The only problem is it wasn't true. Turns out that it was Secret Service investigating a threat. Bill Malugin of Fox reporting that Chicago Public Schools falsely claimed they block ICE officers from entering a school. The narrative took off. Apparently nobody bothered to check with DHS or ICE, both of which denied the claim. Turns out it was Secret Service agents. The Secret Service leader identified themselves, or at the time identified themselves, and left business cards. They were looking for a student who made a threat to a government official. And then Chicago Public Schools admitted it, releasing a long statement saying it was a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding, Steve. I don't know. I mean, the media ran with it. The governor ran with it. They couldn't get to cameras fast enough, and it was all a lie.
Look, Pritzker's running 28. I think Tom Homan, I think it'll happen this afternoon. Call their bluff. We're in Chicago for a reason. Because Eric Adams has already said he made a mistake, a grievous mistake. That's why the Southern District indicted him when he saw the light. In Los Angeles, you see, they're gonna drop the sanctuary city. You have to call their bluff. I think they ought to go in this afternoon and call the bluff of the mayor. If he does not allow the ICE agents into the city jail to pick up the bad hombres that are there, which they haven't done today, arrest him. If Pritzker doesn't let him go into the prisons, the state prisons, arrest Pritzker. If you do have to go into a school, and the principal, you got to arrest him. This is just not about the illegal alien invaders. Remember, these people are essentially, besides the criminals, they're essentially, I would say, innocent for the fact of they were invited in here by radical government that hates the United States of America. It's now time to take the torch to the enemy. And that is the mayor of Chicago and the governor. If Pritzker wants to run in 2028, if he wants to run in 2028, and
Steve Bannon knows some things, right? I think he's got some good ideas.
the way you're going to do that is start arresting officials, start arresting, like, for instance, the Catholic Church. If the Catholic Church bishops are going to come here and throw down and say that, hey, start rolling up the bishops. If it's going to be Catholic Charities, which to me is a criminal organization, and this weekend she's putting out videos.
Whoa, Catholic Charities, criminal organization. But these Catholic charities, Lutheran charities, Jewish immigration, Hebrew Immigration Aid Society, right? These religious based quote unquote charities getting billions of dollars to settle and to subsidize and to encourage people to come to this country illegally. It's an outrage.
Go and arrest them and throw them in the who's gal. It shouldn't be the people that are kind of innocent here are the folks that came. Now we have to work it out that they have to go home, and we got to be empathetic and charitable about that. We don't have to be empathetic, and we do not have to be charitable about the people that made money on a basically human trafficking to get these people here and destroy the country. That's all these NGOs. It's the Lutheran Church, the Catholic Church. You have this Jewish family services, all of them. And if the Catholic bishops are going to throw down on this one, let's just throw down now, Megan. It's just
Honestly,
let's go there.
I thought the same. I was like, why all the money that we donate every Sunday when we go to mass that you think is helping the poor, that you think is helping the underprivileged, it's going to the hundreds of millions that the Catholic Church has been raking in, trying to get these illegals into the country and settled here?
Hold it. The second collection The second collection is basically going to these organizations. You have no earthly idea what they're doing except working. We went down to the border. We've actually shown this over the last couple of years. But the Catholic charities are getting they get $1 billion programs from the federal government. Remember, the federal government uses the NGOs to basically expedite this and work it. That's the whole CPB1 app and all of it. So Catholic charities is maybe the worst, but they're getting billions from the government. Plus, you know, the decent Catholics that go to Mass every week, that second collection, you have no earthly idea where that second collection is going.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's amazing just listening to, you know, what's happening here. Even, okay, it was last week. The Pope said Trump's plans to deport illegal immigrants would be, quote, a disgrace, that it would be a disgrace. I'm sorry, but this Pope, he doesn't speak for millions of Catholics. He really doesn't. I know technically he does, but he doesn't speak for me. He doesn't speak for most conservatives in America, who really, we've had about enough of his far left social agenda. Tom Homan, back to him. He was asked about the Pope's comments, and as usual, hit it out of the park. Watch.
I'm going to give a message to the Pope guy. I'm a lifelong Catholic. I was born Catholic. I've been through Catholic doctrine. Look, he only concentrates on fixing the Catholic Church, first of all. He's got big problems there. And in the Vatican, they have a wall around the Vatican. And if you illegally enter the Vatican, the crime is serious. You'll be charged with a serious crime in jail. Yeah. So he can protect the Vatican where he lives. He can build a wall where he lives. Where American people are not allowed that? No. Securing the border saves lives. He needs to understand that. We secure the border. When less people come, less women get raped by the cartel. Less children die in the river. Less Americans die from fentanyl overdoses. He ought to stick to it. He ought to stick to the Catholic Church and fix that. That's a mess.
You know, Steve, last week we were critical of that Episcopalian minister who was lecturing to Trump and J.D. Vance when they did her the courtesy of going by National Cathedral. The Pope's know better. I mean, the Catholic Church is doing exactly what that Episcopal minister did, trying to lecture Trump to be more humane when it comes to immigration policy without...
Bloody Roman Catholic Church, bloody Christian charities subverting our nations by subsidizing and encouraging illegal immigration. My God, when will someone talk about the institutional left-wing Christian question? Is hereditarian research abhorrent, right? To me, truth is a beautiful thing. Different people have different gifts, right? How much of our selves, our personality, our tendencies come from genes? To me, that's a worthy area of intellectual inquiry. I can't imagine trying to shut it down. So let's suppose that it turns out that your diet is, you know, inconsequential for your health as compared to, say, your genetics, all right? Then you can make better choices. We only have so much willpower. And so the willpower that you use to rigorously limit what you eat, or the willpower that you use to force yourself to exercise if you hate exercise, or however you're using your willpower, right? It's limited. We only have so much willpower. It steadily descends through the day. And so getting some clarity about what is in our genes, what is something that we're inheriting, and where do we have the power to make a significant difference through our choices and through the use of our willpower. To me, these are all commonsensical areas to investigate.
I think I know the answer that you will give, but can you...
So this is Bo Weingart talking with Noah Carl. Is hereditarian research abhorrent?
Tell us about the article, or what the article was a response to.
Yeah, so listeners are probably aware that hereditarian research attracts its share of criticism and is often denounced as racist and eugenicist and white supremacist. There's now a new paper.
I mean, with every genetic cluster, with every gift, all right, there comes a price. So Ashkenazi Jews, for example, developed above average levels of intelligence, and along with the genetic structures that provide for higher levels of verbal IQ, right, there is a predisposition to all sorts of diseases, and there's often a weakness in eyesight. And so no genetic gift comes without a curse. I would think you'd want to know what are the different genetic gifts and curses of individuals, groups, peoples, nations.
Written by Lucas Matthews, James Tabbery, and Eric Turkheimer, the latter being a quite noted behavior geneticist, which argues that hereditarian research is abhorrent. So they don't mince words. And it's worth noting before we get into our critique that where it was published, namely the Hastings Center Report. This is a bioethics journal, which, as I understand it, is reasonably respectable. Interestingly, back in 23, the journal published a long article with 19 authors, which argued, among other things, that hereditarian research should be held to higher evidentiary standards because of its potential harms, and that when those standards are not met, and I'm quoting here, there should be a very strong presumption against its being...
I'd want to know if certain personality tendencies of mine are primarily genetic, right? Why would I not want the most clarity possible so that I can most effectively use my limited supplies of willpower. Why would I not want to understand the tendencies of other people around me?
Conducted, funded, or published. Now, we were not particularly impressed by the arguments in that paper, and we wrote a brief commentary, which we submitted to the journal, but they declined to publish it. And in our commentary, we pointed out that the paper in question had failed to cite every major work that had argued in favor of doing research on the genetic basis of group differences, and all the papers they failed to cite were published in mainstream journals. They weren't published in these awful journals that Emil Kierkegaard developed. They were published in places like evolutionary psychological science, philosophical psychology. There was one that was even published in Nature, which is one of the world's most prestigious journals. So they basically just refused to cite any work that made an argument contrary to this. Anyway, so we submitted a commentary making that point and a few other points, and they declined to publish it. So I decided to write a rebuttal to this.
Right. If you will not allow open discussion, if you just rule out any opposing viewpoint as ipso facto immoral, you're not exactly standing on strong intellectual grounds, right? If any competing idea is ruled out of bounds, then you've obviously got to rig the game to try to get your point across.
New paper that claims hereditarian research is abhorrent in aporia, rather than risking being rejected by the Hastings Center report once again.
Yes. So it's this is a bioethics journal, because one would think that such an incendiary and morally laden term as abhorrent, when applied to a research domain in science, you might find that in some obscure blogger's blog, but to see it in a bioethics journal was, I would say, quite surprising to me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an expert in linguistics, but abhorrent is about as strong a term as you can use for anything. Like evil is probably
evil and abhorrent are yes.
They're more or less synonymous.
Yes, and now, but to the author's credit, they do attempt to operationalize, to define in a, I don't want to say rigorous, but at least to give us a definition of abhorrent, so it's not just this emotionally supercharged term.
Yeah, so they devise what they call a map, which has two axes. On one axis is the amount of value that a scientific research program has, especially its scientific value, and on the other axis is how much harm it poses to society.
The pursuit of truth, the acceptance of truth, the welcoming of truth, and the openness for truth is ennobling for individuals and for societies and for academics and for institutions. And to flee from the pursuit of truth is a trip down a very dark lane.
And therefore they distinguish between four quadrants: high harm, high value, high harm, low value, etc. And they say that scientific research, which is high harm and low value, is abhorrent. And it's abhorrent because its only effect is to do harm. Now, on my first reading of paper, I thought, okay, so they're redefining abhorrent in this slightly unusual technical sense. But then on my second reading, I came across a quote where they literally say that about hereditarian research, which they call genomic race science, its abhorrent nature warrants moral disgust. So they really are saying that it's abhorrent in the conventional sense of the term.
Yes. It's abhorrent in the way that, I mean, obviously they would say to a lesser degree, but in the way that, say, punching an innocent child in the face is abhorrent, and we should be disgusted by it.
Yeah, I mean, that warrants moral disgust. Yes. People, presumably.
Yes. Right, so this is okay, so to be clear, it's like a harm value, and that which falls into, let's just make it into quadrants, that which falls into the high harm, low value quadrant is abhorrent. Presumably, the closer it gets to the absolute corner, the more abhorrent it becomes.
If it's edging towards the other corner, presumably
less abhorrent.
You would not use the term abhorrent, perhaps simply very bad or something.
Right. So one thing I want to point out, I think it's useful to go through this article. So horrible is the article; it deserves careful criticism.
Yeah, let's start at the beginning of the article and just kind of scroll through it.
So, I mean, do we want to? Okay, so well, it's up to you. Do you want to go over even the ridiculous opening about the eugenics intelligence conferences?
I want to mention that in the opening of the article, they refer to the London Conference on Intelligence, which was a series of conferences held at UCL and other locations, at which various people, including some academics and other independent researchers, presented their work to one another for feedback, like a normal academic conference. Of course, the topics were more controversial than I found at traditional academic conferences, but aside from that, it was fairly conventional. And they characterize these as secret conferences and also refer to them as eugenics conferences.
They call them clandestine eugenics conferences.
Yeah, as if the main purpose was for everyone to sit around a table and try to establish, how we're going to stop certain populations from breeding.
Yeah, so they characterize this as almost a global conspiracy.
Yeah, and of course, they don't cite, from what I can tell, the rebuttal that was published in the journal Intelligence, which is a perfectly respectable journal that was written in response to various media mischaracterizations of the London Conference on Intelligence. But rather, they repeat these exaggerations and sensationalisms without citing rebuttal. So just as the previous paper I mentioned didn't cite any of the work that ran contrary to its arguments, this paper doesn't cite a very relevant paper that runs contrary to one of its claims.
Right, and this is essentially this is how they open their paper, I suppose, to set the mood about how abhorrent this secretive club of eugenicists is, right? And this is what we're up against here.
Precisely, I'm sure that's exactly why they did it.
Yes, because
they could have at least, as is normal academic practice, cite the rebuttal that was published in Journal Intelligence, even if they wanted to disagree with elements of that rebuttal. But of course, they pretend it doesn't exist.
Yes. So something that I found interesting is once, after they set this up, they say, okay, among individuals, IQ is heritable. We kind of know this. But then they make this claim that most of academe outside the immediate field studying intelligence and behavior genetics probably thought that the issue had been resolved for the better. Race was a social construct. IQ tests were invalid. Twin studies were methodologically flawed. The bell curve was thoroughly debunked. So they're basically like, yeah, people outside of this field, they believe all of these things. And they seem to suggest that this was a good status quo, which struck me as odd because literally every claim they make there is wrong. It's pervasive misinformation.
Indeed, and Turkheim himself is an expert on twin studies. He may recognize they have certain limitations. He may be more critical of them than he once was, but I would be surprised if he thinks that they are methodologically flawed, given that he spent much of his career doing them.
Right, so we should make a distinction there between flawed and limited.
Yeah.
Every method in science will have limitations, especially when you're, wrestling with something as complicated as, genetic contribution to trait variation. So of course they're limited. They're not flawed in any way that, vitiates the results.
It's not like a test for some chemical that doesn't actually test for that.
Right, and the bell curve was thoroughly debunked. No, it wasn't. Even the APA's, statement on it basically confirmed most of it.
Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway, I found that it's almost as if they were nostalgic for this time when everybody believed completely false things about the state of quote unquote race science.
Yeah, it's not 100% clear what they mean in that paragraph, but
right, it's
as you've noted, it's highly plausible that they're casting a positive light on that situation.
Yeah, and they even say they end this with this weird sentence: "The liberal social science establishment could breathe easy." So I guess the idea is all good liberals were happy with this state of affairs. I don't know. It was bizarre.
I guess that's an acknowledgement that there's that liberals are inherently wary of from intelligence and behavioral genetics research.
Yeah. So anyway, that caught my eye. I thought that was bizarre. And I mean, they never really say, that kind of nescience was unfortunate, right? They just seem to lament that it's been, that innocence has been violated by, quote, race science is back.
No, exactly. The next thing I wanted to...
Right. Some people, due to their genetics, they need to avoid certain foods. They need to follow certain practices. Right. There are all sorts of ways that if we're better informed, we can make better decisions. And to just rule out the importance of understanding, right, our genetics is absolutely insane.
Is this what we will see every single day, ending in what the president has promised is millions and millions being deported?
Yes.
Trump's message, F around and find out.
I don't want that person in my country, and I think most Americans agree with me.
Our government is filled with the most incompetent and most lazy people. The people working for it are not doing what they need to do to take care of the rest of us.
Say goodbye to the lazy and the crazy. Vivek joins Primetime.
I don't feel bad for them at all.
You're going to think your stuff's going to get cheaper? They do not give a damn about the cost of eggs.
Nah.
Just one quick additional thought on AI that I saw today, and it struck a chill down my spine, not in the sense that it's bad for humanity, but it will be a challenge. And that is that there are all sorts of professions, right? There are all sorts of jobs that on Monday will be secure, and by Friday they will be obsolete because AI can simply do them more quickly, more effectively, more efficiently, and with more excellence. So when I watch a baseball game, to me it's incredibly frustrating when the umpire gets balls and strikes wrong at best 10% of the time. right? Sometimes it'll be 20, 30% of the time they'll get the balls and strikes wrong. We should have AI calling balls and strikes. And then the NFL keeps rigging contests in favor of the Kansas City Chiefs. So the Buffalo Bills went for it on 4th down, and their quarterback yesterday, Josh Allen, clearly achieved a first down by at least a third of a football length. So it wasn't centimeters, right? He clearly achieved a first down by 6+ inches. And they looked at the replay, and it was clear he'd achieved a first down against Kansas City. So at this point, it's the 4th quarter. The Bills are up by 1 point. They're driving. They've got the ball on about the Kansas City 40-yard line, right? So they're driving towards victory. And the one official gets it right. The other official gets it wrong. And the two officials come together and side with the guy who got it wrong. Then they go to replay, timeout replay. The replay clearly showed that Buffalo had achieved a first down, and the NFL says, no, the call on the field stands. So why is the NFL repeatedly rigging contests and referee decisions in favor of the Kansas City Chiefs? Because of Taylor Swift, right? She is dating Kansas City Chiefs tight end Travis Kelce, and tens of millions of additional people will watch the Super Bowl because they are Swifties, right? People who I know who, under no circumstances in Australia, would otherwise be watching the Super Bowl are going to watch the Super Bowl to see Taylor Swift cheer for Travis Kelce. So on the one hand, it seems to make for a good business decision, but football is like a $20 billion industry, and you clearly got a result here where Buffalo had achieved a first down, and the NFL just decided to. So let's see if we can go. Look. So this official here, right, he saw the first down, right? He caught it right, but then he walks towards the other official who got it wrong. So we've got NFL revenues, $20 billion per year, and we still determine 4th downs like this. Right, this guy gets it right, this guy gets it wrong, but this guy starts going over here in that direction. And with AI, right, we could easily know definitively, we can see definitively already that the Bills got a first down, but it's taken from them. It's rigged in favor of the Kansas City Chiefs. It's a $20 billion industry that's getting rigged. Right, I really like this Lindy Li woman, big Democratic Party fundraiser, but a conservative Democrat and frequently the voice of common sense.
Immigration for me is a very, very big issue. I'm a legal immigrant. I'm a naturalized American. My family and I waited years to come to this country. This is not opportunism. This is just the way that I am.
Yeah.
And as you know, they say that a Republican is just a Democrat mugged by reality. I've been assaulted multiple times on the streets of Philadelphia simply for getting my dinner. Like, I was just standing there, and I mean, I have a paper trail. I'll file a police report. Like, this happened to me. And, you know, as I've gotten older, I've become more conservative. I grew up in the era of Barack Obama, and it wasn't acceptable to be a Republican. I think there were like 2 Republicans on my college campus.
Right.
It was just conservatives were just ostracized. I didn't realize until recently that not being a member of the Democratic Party was an option. Immigration for me is a very, very
Right, that blown first down call against the Buffalo Bills was literally the tipping point in the game. All right, the Bills were in a position to win. They were favored to win, and the NFL had time, right? They took a replay timeout. It was obvious, like even a blind man could have seen it. Right, NFL throwing another game to the Chiefs. Skip Bayless says it was refs protecting refs, right? The one ref on the field got it wrong. The other refs sided with him, and then the replay refs sided with him. Right, Lindy Li. She's worth a follow.
I think my break with the Democratic Party on finances led me to rethink a number of things. I grew up in the age of Obama. I was kind of just like plunged into that liberal mentality, and I've had a lot of time over the past year. This was not just a few months thing for me. This has been a long time coming, and a number of events in my personal life that catalyzed my rightward shift. As I mentioned at the top, I've always been a conservative. This whole porous borders thing is a serious concern for me. Mark, I'm a naturalized immigrant myself. I came to this amazing career. Actually, I came from Sheffield, England. I came to America with just $200 with my parents. I was 4 years old. We didn't take any handouts. We came here the right way. My parents and I waited years to come to the United States. And then to see millions of people pour across the border is just it seems very unfair. I think my break with the Democratic Party on finances led me to rethink a number of things.
Yeah, so follow Lindy Li. She's got a lot of good things to say.
Sorry if this offends anybody, but I've turned rightward in recent years. So I mean, I get it. I may not do the same thing, but I understand where he's coming from. I've always been, center right. That's always where I've been. But the Democratic Party has been lurching increasingly to the left and has thoroughly left me behind.
Right. They've left you. You haven't left them, really.
Yeah, unfortunately, back in the day, not too long ago, maybe just 5-6 years ago, we would be able to say men shouldn't be in women's sports. And everyone would be like, oh, yeah, of course, like, duh. Now it's a crime to say that. I said that men, this is what I said on Fox. I said, men are men and women are women and men shouldn't be in women's sports. The fury over that statement was just like unbelievable. Sorry.
Okay, what else is she saying here?
Sorry, this.
Okay, I like her. Let's get a little bit more.
Thank you so much for having me. Well, I think maybe you were looking for someone to oppose the nomination, but I actually have personal interactions. Because I've been on Fox and Friends, I've met Pete, and he's my fellow Princetonian, and I actually think he's a pretty good guy.
Wow, I was not expecting this from you, Lindy.
I know, but fair is fair, right? I'm not here to gaslight anybody. I'm just here to present the facts as I know it. Although I will say a lot of people are saying his nomination is in trouble. We'll see. He's definitely a fighter. As he told Megyn Kelly, he said Trump asked him to be tough as blank. And he's certainly that way. And we'll just see if Joni Ernst can come around, because I feel like she's the linchpin on this.
Yeah, so he was confirmed. All right, come on, give me more here. What else you got? Bring it, Lindy Li.
Absolutely, and I've been working with incoming RNC chair Casey Crosby. She's absolutely amazing, and I've been able to introduce her to a number of huge mega DNC mega donors who are very upset about the way that the DNC has handled their money through the Kamala Harris campaign. And I've already recruited them. They've agreed to help the RNC. So it wasn't really even a hard sell. People are just extremely upset by the fact that the money was mishandled so poorly. And number two, no one ever addressed what happened. We never got any answers at all. So some of these donors are disaffected Democrats. And I wonder how the DNC is ever going to rebuild their image in the next 4 years, given that no action has been taken to remedy what happened in 2024. No answers have been given. So, I mean, good luck to them. I don't see any sense of remedial action.
I know that you've taken a lot of hits because you essentially changed who you were working with and raising money for. What's the future for you in this new era?
I'm excited for the midterms, honestly, and I'm also going to be involved in the 250th birthday of our nation next year. There's going to be a huge celebration around that as well. And that's something that I think Americans on both sides of the aisle can get on board with. But I am just honestly fed up with my own party, with my former party, and excited for common sense policies like strong borders. Trump is already coming out and issuing a lot of executive actions in that regard. Strong borders, common sense, a strong economy. And I think, I'm excited to see what the next 4 years hold.
All right, Lindy Li, thank you for your time as always.
All right, what does Bill Burr have to say?
I like the Chiefs.
You're really going out on a limb, aren't you?
Dude, hey, listen, the Eagles are really good, but I also chose...
boy, are they?
But I chose the Chiefs.
The Eagles are going to have to be up by at
season.
least 30 points.
All right, go there, Bill. Go there.
Other than ignore.
Go there. No, I'm not.
Ignore.
I'm not ignoring.
Then
I'm not
ignore.
ignoring. I'm
Then
not
ignore.
ignoring.
Oh,
Go
yeah,
there.
no. That's the greatest team you're ever gonna see. It doesn't get any better than that. And it's just the football at the highest level. And if you're not appreciating what's going on, then there's something wrong with you.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
Dude, it's a show. Okay, they're all shows at this point. Like, I think there was a while there where I think. Listen, let's be honest. Okay, there's always been point shaving, mob gambling. It's always been, and all sports have always been like that. But I think we're going into like an unprecedented time of that on all sports or whatever. So I'm not just singling them out. I don't care about that stuff. But I'm just saying, like,
you think the Chiefs are not as good as we're making them out to be, Bill? I mean, I'm trying to put the hammer directly on the head.
It's a business.
Yes,
it's a business, and you got to look at the problem with the Chiefs is Patrick Mahomes doesn't have a dance partner. Well, you had Bradshaw, Staubach, you had Montana, Elway. He's just the only guy. So if you don't like the Chiefs, you should everyone should buy the jersey of that kid on the Redskins. So then the NFL will be, maybe there's some money. Maybe this is lucrative. If we could sort of, I don't think it's fixed. I think it's massaged. There's definitely more back rubs on one side than the other. I mean, I don't know. Like, dude, you know what kills me was when I watched the NBA in 2000. I was going like, this is fixed. This is fixed.
Well, at times it was, wasn't it?
Yeah,
right.
But then they do the Oswald thing. They blame it on one guy.
Right.
Yeah, it was just him. It's like, if I'm on an officiating crew with you and I'm shaving points, how long before you figure that out? Half a quarter. Half a quarter. You figure, like, what is this guy doing?
I see what you're saying.
And then you come up to me upset, that I'm not letting you in on the action because we're both underpaid.
See, but the thing is, like, I understand.
We're wearing our athletes' foot shirts, right? And our dirty slacks. Like, you ever take one of those American airline flights with, like, the propellers?
Yeah.
You ever see the pants of the pilots? I mean, they're getting paid less than a substitute teacher. It's insane. They come in with those old black Reeboks on. They look like they're waiting tables at Applebee's, and you're putting your life in their hands. They're grossly underpaid. I'm not saying they're bad pilots. It's just like, it's like there's nothing spiffy about it.
So you'd feel safer flying on a plane with a guy with a better pair of pants, is what you're saying.
I'd like to see a crease. I'd like to see a crease going into the cockpit. I don't want TGI Fridays.
But it's a party.
Like they got a bunch of miserable people walking in the back having to sing a happy birthday to somebody.
So you, watching at home, part of you, Bill Burr, thinks that when Allen's stepping into the line of scrimmage in a 4th down and short, and he's called, and he's barely making it to the line of scrimmage, just a little past it. Maybe he's got the first down, maybe he doesn't.
And maybe one guy says it is a first down, and the other guy says it. You know which way it's going to go.
Somebody's sitting there going, "Here's my chance to get that massage." Like, is that what you're saying? Because again, that's. I
just think, where is the money? Like, come on, man. They got all the stars. They got Taylor Swift. I mean, that's going to be a lot. Like, it's a business. Why are they an entertainment league? Why aren't they a sports league?
So you're thinking that there is a thumb on the scale. I'm
asking you.
Yes, sir.
I'm asking you.
Yeah.
Why are they called an entertainment league? Why are they not?
Because they're a sports league, but it is entertainment in this day and age. You know what I mean?
If you're called an entertainment league,
yes,
and a game is proven to be fixed, you can't be. From what I've read, you cannot be tried because it's entertainment. It's sports entertainment.
So you don't think the Chiefs are as good as they really are?
I'm not going to say that.
Okay.
I'm not going to say that. I'm just saying that it's a business.
You got Chiefs fatigue. That's what you've got.
What?
You got a little bit of the Chiefs fatigue. You're tired of watching.
It was rigged. All right. The Bills were robbed.
Now the Democrats care about inflation?
It's $10 to buy eggs, Rashida.
Plus, I'm the king of the world! One week in, and 47's on a hot streak. Saturday, he decided to test his luck at a craps table in Vegas.
Okay, let's get Kip back onto the show. Kip, what's going on, man?
What's up, man?
Not much.
Bill Burr, he's I just don't like him. He's so phony. He's the kind of guy that owns a Prius and a helicopter. You get what I'm saying?
No, I quite enjoy him. So no, I don't get what you're saying. Tell me more.
Well, what's a Prius owner screaming to you? What is he as a Prius owner in Southern California? What's that scream to you? That he's part of the environmentalist, right?
Right.
But at the same time, he owns a helicopter.
Right. Well, nobody's
anything.
pure in anything. I mean, whatever you believe in, there are all sorts of ways that you betray your beliefs. So everybody makes compromises. So I just don't see any big deal if you own a Prius and a helicopter.
Oh, okay. Well, I also have a little bit of theory about the professional sports. As I've gotten a little bit more, whatever you want to call black-pilled or whatever, like an Uncle Ted type, when it comes to those surrogate activities, I kind of feel like most of those leagues have like 32 teams, and I kind of feel like there's about, at any given time, only 5, 6, at most 7 teams that matter, and everybody else is just the schlubs that are being filled out on the schedule. You get what I'm saying? For the teams that matter to play, you know?
Yeah,
So,
well, Bill Walsh, I used to cover the San Francisco 49ers when Bill Walsh was coaching them, and he'd say, yeah, at the time there are 28 teams in the NFL, but only about 6 of them are capable of winning the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess you're talking about a capability fact, and I'm probably adding in maybe management. You know, there's only so many managers that really give a shit about pursuing that ring every year. And we would have to agree, love them or hate them. I hate them. Steelers would be one of them, right? You agree?
And it varies from year to year. So Bill Walsh wasn't saying that it's the same 6 teams every year, but each year
Right.
there are about 6 teams who are capable of winning the Super Bowl. Like the last 8-10 years, the Steelers have never been capable of winning a Super Bowl.
Well, what I'm telling you is there are not 32 passionate owners in the NFL. You get what I'm saying? There might be 6 or 8 that really eat, sleep, and breathe that stuff in the manner that their super fans do. Does that make sense?
Right. The Jones family is clearly checked out. They're not invested much in the Dallas Cowboys except as an entertainment product. And so as long as Jerry Jones is the general manager of the Dallas Cowboys, they're never even going to get to a championship game, let alone a Super Bowl. I mean, they just hired Brian Schottenheimer as their head coach. My God.
Yeah, but in the 90s, though, Jerry Jones would have given Shylock his pound of flesh.
Yes.
For another, you get what I'm saying? So that I guess we're both right. There are just a few many of those owners in the whole thing. The rest of them are just somebody for them to play on the schedule. But it is true that stuff waxes and wanes with the age component, factored into it. True enough, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay. What else was going to say? Earlier you had mentioned something about some fella being chipper about capital flowing back from Asia to America.
Yes, Alex Castellanos.
Yes. One of the great magic acts that America did, I don't know, for a period of time, was we were able to export inflation. And of course, that's something nobody's going to talk about. Nobody wants to talk about. But somewhere along the way, it was all fine and dandy when China started making goods for America, and they spent the money, in places in Asia and all that stuff. That was all fine and dandy because we were able to live beyond our means without the chickens coming home to roost. But what happened, Luke, was eventually they started getting U.S. treasuries. They caught wind, maybe some smart bean counter told them that's not the way to do it. What you ought to do is you should buy U.S. treasuries. And that's what they started doing, is buying U.S. treasuries. So basically it comes those dollars come back to America. You get what I'm saying?
Well,
So we're not.
during the 1970s, when OPEC raised oil prices, they still had to invest those dollars somewhere, and so those dollars would still come back to America.
Right, right. Yeah, right. Sometimes, but maybe not all Asian countries have caught on to it, but China at least has caught on to the fact that, America, they may have the fanciest army and navy and all that kind of stuff. Maybe we do, maybe we don't. But there's more than one way to skin a cat. So I think, as always, China may be playing the long game, on this particular deal. So I'm just saying.
Hey, have you seen those photos of China where they redirect an entire 10-lane freeway around one house? Like the United States, I didn't realize this, but the United States uses eminent domain far more than China does. China will redirect enormous public projects such as freeways around one stubborn homeowner. Like the United States government can get things done in a way that the Chinese government apparently cannot.
I don't know if it was Bugs Bunny or Wile E. Coyote, but I saw a cartoon about the exact same thing. You know what I mean? Where maybe Bugs Bunny was just making such an ass of himself that he just woke up, and instead of moving him, they had like an interchange all around him, spider webbing out in every direction. So, yeah, such is life. You were showing the Chinese lady.
Lindy Li.
Yes, she had that. She was like one of Eliot Blatt's Chinese ladies, wasn't she? There's enough American in there. There's no mangling of the language going on. It's just perfect. Why can't I get those at my Chinese restaurant? Well, can you get them at your Chinese restaurant, or does Eliot Blatt not let them leave San Francisco? What's the story there?
Do I meet Chinese who are 100% Chinese? Yeah, I think I do. I mean, I don't like Chinese food, so what's?
Oh, okay. So you don't go out and get services and find Chinese people that speak English. You just don't necessarily. Your dry cleaner isn't Chinese. You're not having regular interactions with Chinese, is what you're telling me. Is that what you're saying?
I do, but I don't think about it. I don't understand. I have interactions with Chinese. I have interactions with Japanese. I have interactions with Koreans, and I'm quite fond of all three types.
Do they have?
People.
Do these people that you interact with have command of the English language?
It varies.
It varies, yeah. Anyway, my Chinese place, they do this sort of magic act. When I go to check out there, I get one of these plates to go, and it says right there on the thing, if you want food to go, it's $6.29 a pound, which on the face of it sounds like a bargain. And then, so like today, just like so many other days, I talked myself into getting a plate to go for me and the dogs. It's something we can like share together. They enjoy meat on a stick, and I enjoy some other things. So anyway, it's one of them deals where you make your plate and you put it on the little scale, and the scale says $6.29 a pound, and you put the plate on there, and it says like 1.8 something pounds, and it's going $11.98, $11.99, $11.98, kind of wiggling back and forth. And the lady says, anything else? And I said, no. And she said, $14.90. And so I take my finger and I hold it over there to where the scale is. And I'm like, the scale says $11.98, $11.99. She said, for $14.90. So I pay the $14.90, and I just wonder, what's the mysterious $3 charge? That the tax should be about like 90 cents or $1 or whatever. So, but it's one of those like soup Nazi situations, because there's not another Chinese place in town. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm
Would you marry one of your dogs? Like if you really loved her?
No. I'll give you a strange marriage thing that I considered with a friend of mine, a black fella named Mr. Rowe, right? It's a dude, and he's a dude. And, they started doing this hot and heavy, gay rights this and gay rights that. And I say, Mr. Rowe, I'm not gay or anything, but you'd be a hot catch. And he's like, what do you mean? like, I don't know, man. Maybe one day I'll put together a plan where, like, I offer you something like to make you my wife or something, and then you're gonna die. He's gonna die before me because A, he's black, and B, he's 13 years older than me. You know, so it's gonna happen. He's most likely gonna die before me. And I just told him it's just gonna be a shame to see your 22-year Army pension, and then he did like got a pension from the school system, you know, afterwards, and then of course somehow him being black, they know how to work things out to where he got some kind of 100% disability, so he gets some other fun stuff that normally you or I would just get stuck with Social Security, but he gets something enhanced beyond that. So I told him, I was like, it's going to be a shame because you've ran off every woman you've ever been around. You know what I mean? So in this world, we ought to be able to work it out where we could just be gay on paper. And then when you die, I could just take whatever benefits. And then if I die or whatever, you can get my sorry ass Social Security or whatever that would go along with it. But is there any way to game that system? No homo?
Sure. I mean, that's a beautiful, inspiring story, Kip.
Yeah, yeah. Have they made it to the point where a couple of fellas could game the system without having to show up in front of some third party and you have to like prove that you actually like this person or whatever?
Yeah, no, you don't have to prove that you're getting plowed by the other dude in the ass to get married.
God forbid.
God forbid.
God forbid. That's what I'm saying. I'm just not into any of that kind of stuff. But it would be a shame because I think he is one of these fellas that gets like he don't have a penny to show for it, but every month shows up, he gets like $5,000 a month, and he just like pisses through it like a hot knife through butter, and then he like shows up on the first the next month with like $53 in his bank, and it happens all over again. So it's just
yeah, got it. Did you ever watch Jerry Springer or know people who went on the Jerry Springer show?
No, why? What's got with those are?
I just watched a documentary on Jerry Springer, and one episode, I immediately started thinking of you. It was about a man. He left his wife and his 2 daughters, and he married his pony. And,
oh my god!
And I immediately thought of you.
And what was he thinking about? Was there some kind of legal loophole that made this make sense?
No, he loved the pony, and he was like French kissing the pony there on the Jerry Springer show. He was like, he had a full-on, fully intimate relationship with this pony, and the pony seemed to really love him too.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that kind of, you could tell I've been pretty black-pilled pretty hard along the years. One of the reasons I got black-pilled, I guess you could say early on in life, is, you know, I get told by the military, you know, you got a 127 IQ, you're going to go places, you're going to do things. And I'm thinking, that's the same kind of shit my mom used to say to me. You know what I mean? Is that the same kind of shit Desmond used to say to you, try to get you all pumped up and shit?
Yeah, my parents, my mother, when she was carrying me, she was convinced that I was going to do something important for God one day. Yeah, and I was raised with that. I was raised with the teaching that I was going to do something great for God.
You're special. You're special. So even though you weren't born a Jew, trust me, I've listened to a couple of Jews. They come up. That's part of that specialness or whatever. So anyway,
chosenness. I was chosen by God for important work.
Yeah. So anyway, they got these places called MEPS where you take these tests and they tell you, man, you're smart. And the only way I caught on to what they were saying here was because the Air Force was trying to steal me away from the Marines. They wanted me to be an air traffic controller. And I was like, no. The Marines have already told me I could be an air traffic controller. And then the Navy was like, we want you on a nuclear sub and we're willing to pay you this amount upon graduation of school and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, no, I just want to be a Marine. But anyway, they were showing me the scores and they were like, you know, explaining like a bell curve and stuff. And of course, I'm like you, man. We know the extent of our intelligence, and mine, for example, you can fit on the pinky nail. You get what I'm saying, Luke Ford? But yet these motherfuckers are telling you that you're special. You know, same horse shit your mama
No,
was
I
giving
always
you.
believed it. No, I always believed it. I wouldn't be doing these live streams if I didn't feel like I had something special, that if I wasn't on like a mission from God or had a special role to play in the universe. It requires a level of delusion to do as many shows as I do.
Well, I still don't believe there's just a magic number. You know, I don't think I could just like write 127 on my forehead and just go do everybody's job like they say. You know, it's supposed to be aptitude is something that's similar, you know, to what that number is. Try to tell you what your aptitude is for something. It doesn't mean you're necessarily going to ace something, but it means that you got something between the ears that ought to be able to do it. But I can't paint worth a shit. You know, there's 100 things that I can't do worth a shit. So that stuff is all bullshit. It's all bullshit. The only thing I found is you can get to the intersections of things that you're good at. With me, it was like realizing how people were a little bit, I hate to say it, Luke, gullible. And when I got to the intersection of like understanding people, and then when it came to numbers, Luke Ford, people are terrible with numbers. And so they're always playing catch up in a negotiation. Seemed like to me when I was in negotiation with people, when it came to figures, they were always playing catch up. So once you keep showing them,
life teaches you what you're good at.
Right.
Very quickly you find where you get strokes and where you get people filled with disdain. Like, and you do the things that you love doing.
But I never found anything I love doing, Luke.
You love getting high.
Yeah, but I don't know.
You created the life that you want. You live alone. You live in a beautiful area. You have about as much freedom over your time. You have about as much freedom as a man could possibly hope for. So you have created the life that you want.
Yeah,
and an inspiration.
And I've realized a little bit about that. You better watch those desires, because you'll walk yourself right into onto a hamster wheel. You get what I'm saying? Maybe if I have intelligence, it's on. It could be. You know, I was wondering why you were talking earlier. I was thinking maybe it's the obverse of intelligence. Maybe it's knowing what you're not good at. You get what I'm saying, Luke? Could there be something to that?
Yeah, well, if you're smarter, you should more quickly see what you're not good at as well as what you are good at. I mean, you're good at ripping people off in business deals.
And so
getting high.
Yes. Okay. So don't you see my quandary when it comes to something like, let's say, the Jews, your people, your adopted people, so to speak. It's that elements about them seem to have a negative effect on society. And it's like, well, who do you blame? Because let's just put the rabble rousing and the revolutionary spirit that I just have distaste for, and just talk about just compound interest and things like that.
Have you gentiled many Jews down? Have you used your superior intellect and ability with numbers to use your Gentile heritage to get the better of deals with Jews?
It's not even any work, Luke. I've
just
done
comes
Jews
naturally to you, yeah.
I've done Jews that way. You get what I'm saying?
Cook them like a dinner.
Not all Jews are equal. Let me just tell you, they're not all. In fact, keep in mind that Yale graduate Jew, Mr. Whiteman, you know, he worked for me. There was a reason. So you see what I'm saying? In all his Jewiness or whatever, he was brilliant in certain aspects, but something had happened there. He had like lost focus somewhere. He shouldn't have been working for me. He was a Yale graduate, completely capable of having his own goddamn thing. You get what I'm saying, Luke Ford?
Well, you've got like a rat's cunning.
Well, but how does that translate?
Like if you were in prison, you would be King Rat. You would run the prison, And like you would be the one who would be like raping all the other dudes, not because you enjoyed it, but just because it was like a way of expressing power and dominance. Like I could totally see you running an entire federal penitentiary.
I'll tell you why you're wrong there. You're right. If I could outsource the violence, Luke Ford.
Well, rape is a different kind of violence.
I know, but if we're in a situation, what happens in life, what has happened in life is a fellow that's a little bit smarter comes across a fellow who doesn't have any conscience, and that fellow that don't have a conscience might not be so smart, and he lets the guy that's smart be the brains of the operation. You better watch the fuck out when those two get together, because that's a mean combination. You get what I'm saying? That's a mean combination. At that point.
I mean, you could be incredible if you just teamed up with someone who was really smart.
No, it would just be it would be like, I don't know, it'd be like the lending operation from hell. You know what I'm saying? If you got
boiler room.
Yeah, something like that. I don't know.
Penny stocks. You'd be great at selling penny stocks.
I told you I'm a mystic now, so I can't think that way, Luke, but I'm just telling you, people are suckers. What's his name? WB Fields.
WG Fields, a sucker's born every minute.
Yes,
you never go broke underestimating the taste of the American public.
Yes, yeah. But I feel like there's probably, this is where I lose faith in my own people, because I know if there was a nation full of me, that shit, whatever went down, you said were the end of the WASP and the rise of the Jews, whatever it was, the late 40s, 50s, whenever that happened, that shit wouldn't have gone down so fast. If there was more like me, but unfortunately there's not.
What do you like to do when you're most high? Do you like eating? Do you like chilling? What do you do when you're at your most high?
Music. Music is the thing that really makes that nice. But here lately I've been chomping on Advil, so getting high didn't really have the same effect.
Why are you chomping on Advil? Is there a hole in your soul?
No. I'm sorry. I said that wrong. It was the leaves that I've been chomping on. I re-aggravated 10, 11 years ago. I had an injury going down the gangplank to my houseboat one day, and fell on the ice, and being a Gentile and all, I could have sued the shit out of them, but I didn't, because I liked living there. And I probably re-aggravated that injury 5 or 6 times. And I don't know even what it is. Is it a hamstring?
And did you look up on YouTube what exercises you need to do to overcome this injury?
I tried, but I was deluged with possible, the injury could be this, and the injury could be this. But
don't you know any Jewish doctors? They could tell you. Like, shame you don't belong to a synagogue. You just go to the synagogue, tell someone there what's bothering you, and they'll get you to the best doctor in town.
But there's a price to be paid for that. What's the price paid? You know what I'm saying? That's a whole package there.
It's a package deal.
When I was telling you about my friend that did the 22 years in the Army and then went off and did the school teacher and stuff, I respect that, Luke, because that's something I couldn't do. Maybe intelligence is a blessing and a curse, because somebody like me needs like a change of scenery every couple of years. You ever heard that from people?
Yeah, you're a wandering man.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. In much the same way we spoke about it once before, somebody like me wouldn't need to work in the police department, because you'd put me out in the field, and there would be so many chances for illicit opportunities that I would just write my own ticket.
Yeah, you should not be on the vice squad. You should be in the janitorial department.
Yeah, the cops that get in trouble, I think they face. I would think being a cop, I would think half of your fear of being a cop would be the day that you got in trouble being a cop and had to run into all the old guys that you put behind bars. I would think that brings a whole set of fears onto itself. Speaking of fears, The Marine Corps tested me and everybody for seemingly everything, but there was one thing they did not test us for. When you were young, you remember seeing they would give operations on television. They would they'd show somebody's knee being worked on, on a Saturday show or a Sunday show or whatever. Okay. Even from a young age, I couldn't see those. I would have to change the channel or whatever. They would turn my stomach. So I'm here to tell you, I would probably not fare if you and I were in a foxhole together and all of a sudden I look over at you and half your face is gone or whatever. I'd probably be, if I can't watch an operation on TV, you think I'm going to be able to give you some triage without needing a damn joint or something myself? You get what I'm saying, Luke?
Well, luckily you've always got a joint close to you. But it's funny, I just started watching this Korean TV show on Netflix. It's called The Trauma Code, Heroes on Call. And it's about an incredibly arrogant emergency room doctor. And it's very compelling. He goes out on helicopters onto mountain ledges and rescues people. And there's a lot of explicit surgery in it.
Oh, well, that sounds too gory for me. Not something I would like. Not something I would like. What's some of your favorite all-time TV shows? I mean, going back from TV was good to now.
I like Cheers. I like Cheers. I liked Mary Tyler Moore.
Uh-huh.
And
I think Mary Tyler Moore was extremely popular in its day. It's not one of those things that we see like Carol Burnett in syndication or whatever, but at its time, it was extremely popular.
Oh, I liked Hogan's Heroes.
Oh, I don't know that I like that one so much.
And the Beverly Hillbillies.
Yeah,
and Gomer Pyle. That was quality telly.
You like Gomer?
Yeah, I like Gomer Pyle. He was a beautiful singer too.
What about the ones I mentioned on chat the other day? Rockford Files, did you like that?
No, never watched that.
Miami Vice, did you like that?
No, never watched that.
The Equalizer from the 80s, did you like
that?
No,
never watched that.
Jeez, Luke Ford. What about The Prisoner? Remember that series from the 60s, The Prisoner?
Never watched that.
I just can't win with you. Let me see if I got anything else on my list. Oh, none of the tech we use now, Luke Ford, it didn't have to be, leading to degeneracy the way we see now. What should our tech have focused on? To try to save off the, decadence that seems to be kind of creeping.
The problem is not in our tech, it's in our souls. But more importantly, it's not really in our souls, it's in our society, it's in our community. We have degenerated in terms of social coherence, cohesion, social trust, an easy, connected feeling with our neighbor. And we've had way too much immigration the past 60 years. So I liked the level of social harmony that America in the 1950s had. And ever since then, it's gone downhill. And when people are connected to other people, they are much more vulnerable to vice. But the problem's not the tech. The problem's the bloody immigration policy.
Yeah,
and
that
civil
too,
rights.
But I don't know, this sort of consumerism as it is now, do you think it's deleterious to community, to a sense of community?
No.
Do you think it has effect on that?
No. It's
All
very
right.
minor.
Well,
it's just having bonds with other people and connection and a feeling of immediately being at ease with other people who are similar to yourself. But I got to run. Good to talk to you, bro.
10-4. See you, man. Bye.
See you, man. Bye. Okay, let's finish off with a bit of Jesse here.
Primetime never thought we'd see a sitting president in a casino, but as Politico puts it, Trump is everywhere again. As fast as the movers changed out the White House furniture, the country went from an invisible president.
Okay, chat comment here. I remember a time when there were only a few shows on TV, so people who watched shows inevitably saw the same shows, and then they had something common to talk about. Yeah, there are many advantages to that. But I remember I was talking to this socially awkward dude who ended up getting married and having kids. But when I was new in my journey into Judaism, there weren't many people in and around Auburn and Grass Valley. in Placer County to talk about Judaism, but there was this one guy who was an Orthodox Jew, basically lived on his own in Grass Valley, and he said it was important to marry someone your own age because if there was a noticeable gap in age between you and your partner, you wouldn't have the same TV shows to refer to. That kind of gobsmacked me when I first heard that about age 25.
President, unable to command the spotlight, to an omnipresent one who wants the public's attention at all times. Trump's bringing head-snapping change to Washington, overwhelming the system with a volcanic eruption of action. Axios says, quote, no modern president has done more across more areas of American policy, culture, and life than Trump in the past 6 days. The president hasn't even had the time to pick up his cell. Before last week, if you had Trump's number, good chance he'd pick up and talk. Not anymore. Axios says friends can't even get a hold of him. He wants to focus more on work. Trump World says the president has a chip on his shoulder. His new motto, F-A-F-O. That means F around and find out. And a lot of people are finding out. The 101st Airborne Division, the Screaming Eagles, are landing at the border alongside almost 2,000 members of the U.S. military. And from L.A. to Georgia to Chicago, border czar Tom Homan and his crew are busting up migrant gang hotspots. Almost 1,000 illegals were detained just yesterday. Overnight, agents rounded up dozens of Tren de Agua gangbangers at a makeshift nightclub in Denver before they could even finish their Coronas. They were caught holding drugs and guns when DEA kicked the door down. In New York, a migrant with ties to ISIS was cuffed and stuffed in a paddy wagon. Biden was just letting the guy hang out. Members of MS-13, some wanted for homicide, were scooped up in Boston. Homan says it was a good day.
Okay, question. What do I make about universal basic income? I don't like it because I believe that work is ennobling, but I don't hate it. Right. As long as you have a coherent country where you feel invested in each other, then I think people are willing to make sacrifices and to contribute for things like UBI if that becomes necessary. So social trust, social cohesion, that sense of we're in it together, that we're a united people, to me that's the most important thing. That's even more important than whether or not we have socialized medicine or universal basic income. Now, I don't generally like welfare unless people are in such a desperate position that they desperately need it. But social cohesion and trust is more important to me than whether or not we have universal basic income or socialized medicine. Right. If we were a more united, cohesive country, we would have socialized medicine. But because people who pay a disproportionate amount of taxes see certain groups taking a disproportionate amount of welfare and not contributing much to the tax base, that makes your average American not want to build up, say, a socialized medicine or UBI, universal basic income. So I think overall work is ennobling, is good for you. But I don't hate socialized medicine or UBI. I hate the huge amounts of immigration that we've had the last 70 years. I hate the way that we've incentivized litigation over the most personal parts of our lives through civil rights legislation. So I would love to be done with all civil rights legislation, and I want a complete end to immigration, certainly an end to birthright citizenship, and I want a rapid repatriation of everybody in the country illegally.
And they're just getting started.
I want to go back to those military flights going south. As you said, we have never seen that before. Is that going to be a constant commitment from the U.S. military every single day to take deportees out?
Yes.
So after you do that, then you go after everybody who is there illegally.
If you're in the country illegally, you're on the table.
Trump wants the removals to go faster, pushing Homan to hit quotas, 1,500 a day. Almost the end of the month. You got to hit your numbers, Tommy. Homan says he's planning on making the president a lot happier. Haitians in Springfield are hunkering down, waiting for Homan to drop the hammer. There's nowhere to run and nowhere to hide.
What criminals are hiding in schools?
Look,
middle schools, elementary schools. You going to go into those?
How many MS-13 members are the age of 14 to 17? Many of them. So, look, if it's a national security threat, public safety threat, and what you need to understand is a case by case. Name another agency, another law enforcement agency that has those type of requirements that they can't walk into a school or doctor's office or on a medical campus.
I loathe Steve Bannon's war room after Trump lost the 2020 election. I loathe Steve Bannon's war room for much of its COVID commentary. I love Steve Bannon's war room these days. I mean, this guy is just nailing it. So, yeah, immigration restriction. Love Tom Homan. Love Stephen Miller.
No other agencies held to those standards. The message needs to be clear. There's consequences for entering a country illegally. If we don't show there's consequences, you're never going to fix the border problem.
Police can arrest Americans in schools. Why can't ICE arrest illegals there? The media is complaining and Hollywood's crying. Actress Selena Gomez, who's half Mexican, is very upset that dangerous illegals are being booted out of the country. Tom Homan says, sorry, not sorry.
We're going to do this job, and we're going to enforce the laws of this country. If they don't like it, then go to Congress and change the law. We're going to do this operational apology. We're going to make our community safer. We're going to save. Once we lock that border on continuous operation, you're going to see fentanyl deaths decrease, illegal alien crime decrease, sex trafficking decrease. It's just all for the good of this nation, and we're going to keep going. No apologies. We're moving forward.
The media is still taking the side of foreign nationals. Margaret Brennan at CBS says, come on, JD. Many of these illegals were vetted.
I don't agree that all these immigrants or all these refugees have been properly vetted. In fact, we know that there are cases of people who allegedly were properly vetted and then were literally planning terrorist attacks on our country. That happened during the campaign, if you may remember.
These people are vetted.
Just like the guy who planned a terrorist attack in Oklahoma a few months ago, he was allegedly properly vetted.
That was a very particular case. It wasn't clear if he was radicalized when he got here or while he was living here.
I don't really care, Margaret. I don't want that person in my country, and I think most Americans agree with me.
Sunday was the first time a foreign country told Trump it wouldn't accept their migrant criminals back. 2 American military aircraft were in the air, headed to Colombia. The planes were packed with some bad hombres, Colombian nationals convicted of murder, trafficking, extortion, kidnapping, sexual assault, narcotics. The Colombian president refused to let the planes land, saying Trump was treating Colombians in an undignified fashion by putting Colombian citizens in handcuffs on a military plane.
How would you like to be the pilot of a plane? You got 2 pilots up there, and you got 300 people sitting in a plane. Every one of them either a murderer, a drug lord, a kingpin of some kind, the head of the mob, or a gang member. And you're flying that plane. It's not going to end well. Do you ever see the movie Con Air? That's what, yeah. Except here's the difference. The people in Con Air were actors. They weren't nearly as tough as these guys.
Trump was on the front 9 at Doral when he heard Colombia was refusing deportation flights. He immediately posted that Colombia would be hit with 25% tariffs, going up to 50% the following week. Didn't take long for AOC to start complaining about the price of coffee going up. Coffee hit a 45-year high under Biden, but now she cares about prices. Before Trump even finished the round, the Colombian president caved and offered his own plane to personally pick up the migrants. Trump has a mandate from the people, and he's using it. Just the threat of tariffs alone trounced Trudeau out of Canada, made Mexico reinstitute remain in Mexico, forced Colombia to take their criminals back, and brought Denmark to the table to negotiate Greenland.
This is a very different Donald Trump. He's leading a very different administration in the way he's attacking things, and the American public is very much more in line with him than they were at any point during his entire first term.
Well, I would say, correction, this is not a very different Donald Trump. This is a very different Donald Trump as being viewed by voters in this
in the way he's going about things.
I'm having a hard time believing this.
This is 100% true. I went back. I love spreadsheets. Donald Trump is the first guy ever whose net approval rating in the first month of his second term is higher than any rating that he had in an entire first term, Kate Baldwin. This is true. I don't make stuff up. The numbers are the numbers.
CNN's hosts are calling their own polls fake news. I would never do that at Fox. You notice what CNN's not showing on their screens? Protests. During the campaign, CNN said Trump's mass deportations were illegal, immoral, and straight out of Nazi Germany. And now that he's carrying them out, the whole country's like, did you see the Chiefs game? The American people were ready for change, and Trump's winning the battle for hearts and minds. The New York Times admits the right owns the culture, and the left is losing the battle of ideas. For the first time in 4 years, people feel like Washington listened to them.
What I'm saying is what resonated with the voter. What voter out there can look at the Democratic Party at this moment in time and say there's a voice for us, somebody that speaks for us, that goes up on Capitol Hill and fights the fights that we want them fighting on our behalf. They didn't do that. And that's why their behinds are home, and that man is back into the White House. And they want to sit up there and talk. You look at the networks right now, they're talking about, look at it, this is the latest, look at him, here he goes again. Well, you know what here he goes again means? He's doing what he said he was going to do. He promised you he was going to do these things, and he walked into office week one, and that's exactly what he's doing.
They said Trump couldn't win, tariffs didn't work, and he wouldn't deport. They were wrong about everything. This is what representative government is supposed to look like. They told you it was impossible because they never tried. And now, here we are, just a week in, and it looks like anything is possible. Valuetainment founder Patrick Bet-David joins me now. All right, PBD, the Colombian deal over the weekend.
No. We should be grateful to Jesse Waters, who turns it a great show day in, day out. That opening segment is killer. And damn, I love Steve Bannon these days. Here he is on Megyn
Any
Kelly.
acknowledgement of the rape trees and the fentanyl and the murders that are happening to Americans because of it.
I'd actually say the Catholic Church is worse. The Episcopal is just some bishop up there, yammering like they all yammer on the left. It's just talk. The Catholic Church has been actions. I mean, definitive. And you could actually say, Brother Homan, I think their business model. This is how I got it with Dolan years ago. The business model, as you know, the churches have been emptied from traditional parishioners because of the pedophilia crisis, and other things. This left-wing doctrine. They filled it up with illegal aliens. They have a business model that supports this. On top of all that, they just appointed the most open borders cardinal in America. I think it's McElroy to be the cardinal over at the Basilica here in Washington, D.C. Basically, be the cardinal for one of the most powerful, not the most powerful, archdiocese in the country, Washington, D.C. And then he speaks for the Pope here, and he's going to be in the president's grill. He's an open borders guy, which says no deportation. So there are many institutions, source-backed, philanthropy, religious, that were all part of this. This just didn't happen. The people that are kind of the victims here are the 12 to 15 million that came up, but they can't stay. We have to be the stern parent here. They cannot stay because they're destroying other citizens in this country. They have to go home because you're going to hear on CNBC all the economic reasons they got to stay. It's going to be inflationary. It's this, it's that. It costs too much money, all of it. Bottom line, if we're a constitutional republic, you can't be invaded. This is about our sovereignty. They all must go home. And I believe you have to have a massive investigation, a criminal investigation with a grand jury and a special prosecutor about how this happened. And people have to be held accountable. If we cannot hold those that are responsible accountable, then we're going to lose our sovereignty that way.
You know what? The idea of an investigation is really interesting because just today it hit that among those Joe Biden pardoned with his massive, wave of a wand was a killer of two people in Connecticut, a mother and child. And Dick Blumenthal, the Democrat senator from Connecticut, is out there saying this was a massive mistake, that he doesn't believe Biden intended to do this, that this killer was represented by the ACLU to Biden to be a nonviolent drug offender. And that's why he got lumped in. And there are already some on X calling for an investigation into how this and all the other pardons were made and whether Joe Biden was compos mentis in order to grant the clemency and the pardons that he granted, and whether some of these things can be undone, whether even the president himself intended to actually allow some of these people out of jail.
They could definitely be undone. And I say this about the January 6th. As you know, it has to be because they did it so late. They did it. It was his Justice Department. It has to be Pam Bondi and the Justice Department that has to do this. And remember, Emil Bovee, the number 3 guy in the Justice Department, was actually on the raids with Homan over the weekend. We actually did a sidebar interview with him, my guy Ben Berquam. He said he was outraged by what he saw as obstruction by officials, government officials in Chicago to stop this. So that's what I'm saying. We have to adjudicate all this. And these pardons, all of the pardons, including for Cheney, all of them, actually have to be executed by the Justice Department because Biden waited too late. And so I think that all of those ought to be in play. Tom Fenton is adamant about this. Tom Fenton doesn't think any of these pardons, and we got to look at these ones. The pardon process is so detailed and takes so many years. It is impossible in this situation in Connecticut for that to happen, right? It's just because you have every piece of record that's there. You don't know what they're slipping into the deck to have Biden just sign off on. So this whole thing, the whole pardon thing, but tied back to also illegal immigration, has to be fully investigated, and we got to get to the bottom of it. And I would tell Pam Bondi, do not execute on any of the pardons for anybody until we get to the bottom of it.
It's so disturbing. I have no idea whether Joe Biden knew what he was doing, but that is something we should be assured of, because it's one thing to do a controversial pardon. It's quite another to have
That's fascinating. Can we revisit those Biden pardons? Was he in a frame of mind where he really had a power to make any sort of reasonable judgment? Right. That was a fascinating perspective. And about 7 years ago, 9 years ago, I used to snipe at Batya Ungar-Sargon. Right, she was then the opinion editor at The Forward. She's a good lefty. She did a PhD in English literature from University of California, Berkeley. And I would make all these criticisms of her where she was really nice initially, but then she just got tired of me and she just blocked me on Twitter. But my God, she's awesome these days. And she's on Megyn Kelly. So she makes the case for Trump from a left-wing Marxist perspective. It's kind of amazing.
It didn't allow. Meanwhile, it was the Secret Service trying to track down somebody who threatened a government official, which has happened under every administration. You have things like, take a listen to SOT 24, which is a transgender Chicago high school teacher with some tough talk for ICE.
ICE can now raid classrooms. And as a high school teacher, I just want to make one thing clear. If someone tries to come in my classroom and take one of my students, one of us isn't leaving the classroom. Play with me.
Okay, my money's on Tom Homan, madam, sir, whatever we have there. This is right, but it's interesting to me, Batya, because this is what we're going to get. We're going to get, let me show you one more. Okay, this is an unhinged Chicago teacher having a similar, you bring it, girl. Meanwhile, these are heavy set, pudgy little, in that guy's case, wig wearing, not tough guys trying to be I'm ready. I've got my gunslingers and I'm going to take, it's could you please just have a seat? Have a seat. Here's the second person.
ICE in Chicago with my students? You think I'd be scared of you trying to come up in my school? You don't think I already have a plan and a backup plan and 56 doors in the building and 17 routes on how to get to each one? I mean, no offense, the district can give us training on what we're supposed to do over and over and over again, and they have.
So I was not a fan of Megyn Kelly back in, was it late 2015, when she asked that very nasty question of Donald Trump in the first Republican debate, but her YouTube show was excellent.
By the way. But I got my own plan. Because there's no way. There's no way. You ever touch one of my kids? Ever. Never. Hello, God? Someone needs to talk to you because that's who you're going to talk to first before you ever touch one of my kids. Because I don't play about mine. Oh. And never have.
I don't think a religious person would speak this way. Right? There is inculcated in you, if you take your religion seriously, that pride goeth before a fall, and you're just much less likely to be this kind of arrogant, cackling fool.
And if you've been around for a while,
you're
you know
gonna shoot
that.
an ICE agent.
Baby, I've written a manifesto up here on what I would do.
Okay, I can see your manifesto has gotten you far in life. This is the same group of teachers, may I remind you, Batya, that during the COVID pandemic made their case that they could not possibly return to school to teach the children they allegedly love so much. And the way they wanted to express it was through my very favorite video of all time, interpretive dance. Here it is.
Make it make sense.
Yeah. Okay.
Safety.
But I guess tough guys like this
essential.
have a plan to take on ICE and make them
Keep our
see God
students
before they touch one of those children.
Safe.
And just for added perfection, this is just the same way you have with J-Lo and others who are campaigning for Kamala and Kamala herself. Every once in a while, this teacher who's sounding just like you or I do starts to slip into her, I have a plan. You don't think I have a plan? I don't know if it's Latina or what it is, but it's some sort of fake ethical appropriation by these teachers so they sound like they have credibility. I have a plan. Could you just, the acting on display today, it's a lot. I guess we better buckle up and get used to it. Your thoughts?
I mean, the grunting and the acting and the laughing, it's clear that this is some sort of sexual fantasy these people have of these ICE agents coming in and them getting into this brawl in this protection of their students. I really want to ask them, why do you not care about the students of yours who have been totally shortchanged by the millions and millions of dollars that are going into ESL to educate students who are not American citizens? Where is the compassion and the empathy for the Black students who are paying the highest price? Because, of course, they always drop these kids in the worst performing, poorest neighborhoods where kids who are already getting shortchanged and short shrifted on education are forced to bear the burden of the pieties of these actors and performers. It's so disgusting. And of course, you know, we talk about this a lot on your show, Megan, like these people are enforcing their open borders woke agenda because they are not themselves paying the price. It's the opposite. The elites have been lining their pockets with the proceeds of this mass migration because it is not them who have to pay for it. They, in fact, are the consumers of illegal labor. And so they show up as if they are the ones with the higher moral high ground and the pieties and the virtue, when actually what they have done is wage class warfare on much poorer Americans and working class Americans who are struggling to give their children the American dream and can't because Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and the Democrats writ large have imported 15 million people to jump the line and take that American dream from them. And it is just so unbelievably amazing to see a president show up and say, you don't have to live like this. You are not alone. And the fact that so many Americans are being represented by Donald Trump, that's really where his power comes from. The fact that this is wildly popular proposals and policies that have purchased, not just with Republicans, but also with the vast majority of Democrats. I'll just say one more thing, Megan. I have never seen a person like Tom Homan show up so ready and eager to do the job, so qualified, from day one with a smile on his face because he doesn't care about the lies they're going to throw at him and the pieties and the garbage that they're going to spout. He knows that he, like President Trump, is representing the best interests of this country, and he's going to do it with a smile no matter what they throw at him. That man is a hero, and he is so the perfect person for the job, just like President Trump.
So true. I show this to Steve. I don't know if you've seen it, but Selena Gomez is a great example of it. 422 followers on Instagram, 422 million followers on Instagram. And first of all, she's the one who starred in that Emilia Perez, which is up for 13 Academy Awards, who's pushing the trans nonsense on Americans and American youth. I mean, I wonder if she's got a thought for what happens to American youth who gets pushed into this when really all they had was some family dysfunction and absolutely no gender confusion, but they get caught in this cult that has taken over, especially with young girls. Where's her empathy for them? It's not present. She just wants to be part of the people who push it. But she...
Okay,